Righty, kia ora koutou, nā mai haere mai, welcome everyone. Please be standing for our waiata. We'll just all crack in together. Well done, that wasn't so bad. Please stay standing and I'll welcome Wendy up to lead us in prayer. Welcome, Wendy.
Kia ora, please join me as I pray for today's meeting. Almighty God, Creator of the universe, we acknowledge that you are wholly good and wholly loving. You love justice and righteousness, and you ask us to join you in bringing justice and righteousness to your world. We thank you for our community leaders here today, for their desire to represent and serve the people of this region and to build healthy and resilient communities for all people. Lord God, your word tells us that those who listen to advice will be considered wise, and your word tells us that you give wisdom generously to anyone who asks you for it. So today we ask for your wisdom. As the business of the council is discussed and decisions made, may those here today listen well to the advice that is offered, and may they ask and receive wisdom from you in all their deliberations. Lord God, in a time and place where there are fewer and fewer examples of healthy disagreement, we pray for your grace and peace to be in this place, so that all matters can be discussed and debated in open and respectful ways, that all voices may be heard and understood, that all perspectives may be considered. Then, Lord, grant your wisdom and discernment to make the choices that will bring justice and righteousness, that will build vibrant and thriving communities in our region. Heavenly Father, may your kingdom come, your will be done on earth, here in Timaru and South Canterbury, today and all the tomorrows, as it is in heaven. Amen.
Thank you, Wendy. Please be seated. Thanks, Wendy. Some good lessons for us all in that prayer. So we'll move on. So welcome. We've got Nicola and we've got Janine. Welcome to you both from the community boards. We've also got Jan Finlayson in the back. Welcome, Jan. Members of the public. We'll move now to apologies. I've got Councillor Parker and also got Wayne O'Donnell from the Geraldine Community Board. Can I have a mover for those? Thanks. Councillor Pye, second it. Councillor Jackson, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we'll go now to public forum. We're first going to go to the rep review. We've got Ecan online now. Ecan and perfect, wonderful. So we're going to welcome Lisa Goodman and Stephen Hill from Ecan and electionnz.com. to talk us through the representation review for Environment Canterbury. Can you hear us okay, team?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I'll pass over to you, and then I'm sure there'll be questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Lisa Goodman. I'm ECAN's General Manager of Governance, and Stephen Hill with elections.com has been helping us with our representation review, undertaking all of the analytical and advisory work for us. So he's our expert in terms of the knowledge, and I'm going to hand over to him to explain a little bit about how ECAN has reached its initial proposal that has just been publicly circulated around a week ago. But first of all, I should also say thank you for the opportunity to be able to come along and explain a little bit about how we've got to this point. So I'll hand over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. Yeah, it's great to be able to spend a few minutes with you. I'm sure you'll have a number of questions, and we're happy to answer those as best we can once we get to that. But as Lisa mentioned, we thought it might be useful just to run through some of the steps taken to get to this point. And I suppose, firstly, many of you will be familiar with representation review processes, and so you'll be aware of some of the constraints and requirements that the process has to proceed under. It's a very tightly prescribed process under the Local Electoral Act, and for regional councils there are some particular requirements and constraints as well. For example, we have the limitation that there can be no more than 14 elected councillors on a regional council, so there's a numerical limit. There's also a requirement that as far as is practicable, the regional council's constituency boundaries should align with the boundaries of territorial authorities or their wards, and so that puts a little bit of a limitation on the ability to be creative with drawing constituency boundaries. Of course, keeping in mind that concept of communities of interest is also significant. The council went through a series of workshops here, first of all looking at some of the background and context for the region over the past 6 years. We looked at how the population per member ratios were sitting. That's one of the key requirements under section 19B of the Act, again, that many of you will be familiar with. And some changes were required to make sure that we tried to meet those population per member requirements. And the other thing that was significant in setting the background for these decisions was the population growth since 2018. A lot of this material is you'll find in the council paper that has been circulated to you, but significant population growth of more than 50,000 over the past 6 years, with a significant proportion of that in the Mid-Canterbury constituency and particularly in the Selwyn constituency, recognising the significant growth in that district over the past 6 years. And so that's had to be reflected in some of the decision making and around the options that were developed to take to the council and that the council has been considering over the last few months. So the council did work through a range of options for how the constituencies might be configured. Retaining the status quo is, of course, one of the options that has been on the table, and that with some modifications to make sure that we aligned with the new Christchurch city boundaries. That option remained in the mix right through to the decision point at which the council looked at what option it would take forward as its initial proposal. And a range of other options were looked at as well over the process, but we ended up in June with 3 options that the council considered. And what we'll do is, if you're happy, I'll share just a summary of some excerpts from that material. Okay, can I just check that you can see that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Stephen.
There were three options that were looked at in the June workshop by the council. The first was essentially to retain the status quo, but with the boundary adjustments to meet the requirements for the Christchurch City constituencies. And that's recognising that since 2018, Christchurch City has adjusted its ward boundaries. So the constituency boundaries for ECAN had to be aligned to meet those. So not a major reshuffle there, but simply to realign those boundaries. And under that proposal, highlighted in the column on the right-hand side, those constituencies that don't meet the plus or minus 10% requirement under Section 19B. So there were some issues there with the status quo option, particularly in the Mid-Canterbury and South Canterbury constituencies, with Mid-Canterbury 24.07 outside the requirement, and South Canterbury overrepresented by 31.71. So that was one of the options that was looked at and presented. You can see the visual representation of those, just simple boundary adjustments within Christchurch City. The second option was looking at the first of two that looked at possible reconfigurations of the constituencies, and this was to effectively combine the Mid and South Canterbury constituencies into what would become a single constituency. And when we did the analysis on this option, you can see that it comes much more closely into alignment with the plus or minus 10% requirements as required under the Act. And in terms of the visual representation there, a combined Mid-Canterbury and South Canterbury constituency, obviously people were very conscious of the geographic size of that constituency being a significant issue there, but that was certainly considered as one of the options. And the third option is the one which is essentially being brought through to the initial proposal, which was to move the Ashburton district into the South Canterbury constituency. So that would become effectively a new constituency, and leaving Selwyn as on its own in the Mid-Canterbury constituency, and that has now been renamed as Waikirikiri Selwyn in the proposal. So that was the third option. Just looking at the numbers there, you can see again, most constituencies within or close to alignment with the plus or minus 10%, the Christchurch West very slightly outside, and Selwyn certainly overrepresented at 14.62, so somewhat over the 10% mark. And councillors did note that with the projected future growth in the Selwyn district, that would be likely to come into compliance with the plus or minus 10% over time. And there is the visual representation of the regional constituencies under that option, which is the one that was brought through as the initial proposal. Council also obviously considered the results of preliminary engagement. There was a significant piece of preliminary engagement undertaken to look at those three options. Looking at across all of the results, when all survey results were considered, option 3, which is the one that is the initial proposal, was narrowly preferred ahead of option 1 and option 2. When we analysed or filtered those results by the affected areas, so those in the Mid-Canterbury and South Canterbury area, option 1, which is the status quo, was narrowly preferred, 1.82 to 1.83. So very hard to separate option 1 and option 3 under that result. There was also comprehensive feedback from all the territorial authorities, including yourselves, and we noted some differences between the territorial authorities. So Selwyn supporting option 3, which is the one that's come through as the initial proposal. Timaru, Waimate, Waitaki and Mackenzie supporting option 1, the closer to status quo option. Ashburton didn't support any of the options that were put forward, and they proposed 3 alternatives, which were considered by the council, but were considered not to be preferred options to take forward further, mainly because of not meeting communities of interest or the population per member ratio requirements. So, overall, noting a majority between those option 1 and option 3. Option 2 was discounted, and those 2 options went forward to the council's decision-making process to adopt its initial proposal, and option 3 was the one that was preferred, with a clear majority that overall the number of councillors would stay the same. So I hope that's useful just in terms of sharing some of the process and background to the decision-making that's got the council to this point so far. Happy to answer any questions if you have them at the stage.
Thank you. Questions? Go for it, Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I suppose one of my concerns is when you talk about community of interest, and that's our rural community. You looked at geographical versus population, but when you were analysing community of interest, I feel there's a massive sector that will be disadvantaged to the current proposal. So in your wisdom, did you have any consideration for the rural communities?
Certainly that was considered all the way through by council, and I suppose it's fair to say that one of the considerations that's been quite top of mind for the council through its deliberations so far has been that tension between the size of geographical areas, particularly for our rural communities, and the communities of interest versus the population requirements that the Act sets down. And so that does put a bit of a constraint on the way that the council is able to consider the needs of rural and large geographical areas, offset against the population per member ratio. So, and it's actually been reflected in some commentary from the Local Government Commission in the past too, that it is an imperfect system, and it does tend to produce results that don't always adequately meet either the communities of interest provision or the population per member provision, and regional councils generally have to try and find a pathway through both of those levers, if you like, as they're considering the options.
Thanks. Anything further? No, I guess one point, the ratios would have been out considerably 6 years ago, weren't they? They were. And I think the council at the time made the decision around the geography and actually because was it 2? No, did they maintain 2 seats for South Canterbury last time, or was that the decision, wasn't it? So
it was, yes, it came to 2 for South Canterbury.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Obviously, we've got some concerns with the size of the geographical region being represented by a few councillors, and I think that probably needs to be taken into account, but will continue to be an active part of the conversation, obviously.
Well, yes, certainly we've got public consultations underway at the moment, and the close-off date for that is the 2nd of September. So all submissions are welcome by that date, and we have Wednesday the 18th of September set aside for hearings on the submissions on our initial proposal. Yep,
perfect. Book us in. Look, we really appreciate that. Good conversation. Thanks for joining us to update. Really appreciate that, both Lisa and Stephen. I think that's it. No further questions? No, all good. Thanks, team. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, public forum, Councillor Jackson, you had a letter you wanted to read? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this has been sent to the Mayor, Timaru District Councillors and the CEO, and I've been asked to read it on behalf of Murray Ackroyd from DLA Architects, Desmond Prisk from Desmond Prisk Architects, and Leon Browning from NB Architects. So the introduction is, we wish to speak in support of the Timaru District Library building. We note recent proposals put to the TDC in relation to the Theatre Royal project include an option to demolish the existing library. We do not wish to comment on any of those proposals. We do, however, wish to place on record the following facts about the existing library to assist in any informed discussions about the future of the building. The library is an architecturally significant building. The library was designed by Warren and Mahoney, one of New Zealand's most decorated architectural practices. The library is a significant example of period architecture. This fact was acknowledged by the New Zealand Institute of Architects in 2007 when they awarded the building an Enduring Architecture Award. To be considered for such an award, buildings must have been completed at least 25 years ago, be of outstanding merit, and must remain important as high-quality works of architecture. The judges at the time were quoted in the Timaru Herald as saying that the building was a beautiful work and as good as the day it was built. Warren and Mahoney share our concerns for the preservation of the library. The library's most recent rating has the building at 40% of NBS. The library is not earthquake prone. The building has recently undergone certain upgrades, including repairs and recoating of the roof and the installation of double glazing. Like any structure, the building will require ongoing maintenance and upgrades. The documentation for much of the required work was commissioned by the TDC between 2016 and 2019, following detailed investigation and analysis of the building by a team of consultants. This documentation was completed in 2019, and the information issued to the TDC at that time included structural strengthening, weather tightness, and insulation, including a new warm roof system, a new heating system, new lighting, and interior refurbishment. The detailed analysis carried out on the building by the consultants demonstrated that the library is far from its use-by date and does in fact warrant the balance of the proposed upgrade works being completed. In summary, to date, we do not believe the condition of the existing Timaru District Library has been accurately portrayed. The building is architecturally significant and is not earthquake prone. The building is generally in good order with an achievable maintenance and upgrade plan in place. Completion of the remaining scheduled maintenance work will ensure the continued enjoyment of this important community asset for decades to come. We urge Council to fully review all available information to enable them to make an informed decision on the future of the library. We oppose the demolition of the existing Timaru District Library. In conclusion, they say, we agree with the comments made by the Mayor when reopening the library following the most recent work on the building, that the decision to invest in bringing the current library up to standard had led to a great result for the community. He went on to say, and I quote, "We knew that beneath the tired fixtures and fittings we had a fantastic purpose-built library that with a little creative thinking and some new technology could be brought back to life. Our staff and an army of local contractors have done an amazing job bringing out the best of this iconic local building, despite some of the challenges it posed. They've stayed true to the spirit of the building's design while creating a brighter, drier and more user-friendly space for all library users." His statements still stand. We would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions in relation to the above. Yours sincerely, Murray Ackroyd, Registered Architect, DLA Architects, Desmond Prisk, Registered Architect, Desmond Prisk Architects, and Leon Browning, Registered Architect, NB Architects. Thank you.
Righty, thank you. Is there any questions for Councillor Jackson in regard to that? You can just use that when we have that discussion later on. We'll just receive a note and we'll need a copy, Councillor Jackson, for the minutes. Perfect. Okay, urgent business. Any urgent business? No. Minor nature, Stu?
Yeah, just had a number of queries on the Timaru District website. Normally you can put it in a street address and it comes up with the rateable value of a property, but more importantly, the rates. And of course, we struck the rates earlier. A number of lawyers use it, valuers, real estate agents, and I guess nosy people. But I'm just wondering why it's not currently on the website.
Yeah, we might, if there's someone that can answer that, we might just try and deal with that now, just to tick that box. Thank you. Stephen, appreciate that.
The short answer is they will be up shortly. The website's based on the rates database. They strike the rates and then they have to go through a period of checking. And there's usually a bit of a lag time by that, and there's new rates like the bid that took about a year around. But basically the website is updated around about the same time as the rates bills themselves are generated. So it'll be around about then, which is sort of end of August usually. Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. No other minor nature? Don't think there was. No. Conflicts of interest. Councillor Booth. (9.9). Yep, no worries. We might, just on that one, ask you to step away from the table. Yep, thanks, Councillor Booth. Councillor Pye.
Leighton's currently a director of that company as well, so I'll have to declare one as well.
Yeah, no worries. We'll just the same. It just might be cleaner, I think, if you just both step away from the table at the time. Perfect. Any other conflicts? Any other against any other agenda? No. Cool. Move now to confirmation of minutes. 7.1. This sort of just tidies up. There was just an issue with the titles of the minutes from last time. You would have seen the agenda was quite messy, which was just a IT issue or something. So we'll just move those minutes again to tidy that up, if that's okay. I'm happy to move them from the chair. Councillor Shannon, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, against, carried. Great, thank you. So I'll move now to 8.1, which is schedules of functions attended by the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for those that have attended on my or Council's behalf. I'll move that again from the Chair. Councillor Oliver, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 8.2 is functions attended by the Chief Executive, Councillor Booth, Councillor Jackson. Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. We go now to 9.1, fixing of the common seal. Move for that. Councillor Oliver, thank you. Councillor Pye, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Move now to actions register update, and that's on page 24. We'll just whip through this. Budget reallocation trial. I think that's fine but ongoing. Traffic management, there was no further updates. Oh, sorry, yeah, Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. Don't worry, Mr. Dixon. I'm happy with this to be removed from the actions register. However, as it's just noted in there, there is a high likelihood of reluctance to do the breaking down of the costs. It's been noted here. Due to commercial sensitivity, I would just perhaps suggest that as all costs within a tender document, for example, are commercially sensitive, I'd perhaps challenge that and ask that going forward, bearing in mind the change in approach, I suppose I'd ask that we just send a signal to our future contractors that we do want some transparency around those costs.
Thank you for your worship. Yeah, so that message has been received by our contractors, and also I have to say that the Minister of Transport has also taken up this charge, and he has made a directive that we have to report temporary traffic management costs on a 6 monthly basis to NZTA. So it is the whole country. So he's looking at that. So we will be collecting these costs now. There will be a bit of retrospective work done by a contractor. The proviso I'll just say is that it is for roading-related works only, and we'll need to expand that into other areas like drainage and water, who are also working on the road.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
You would have been impressed. I was driving down Lacreen Street yesterday and I was amazed. I was thinking we were getting on top of this, but no, we're not getting on top of this. It was like a Cirque du Soleil of road cones. It was almost beautiful, but there would have been about 200. Yeah, there was a lot, wasn't there? Yeah, fascinating. Okay, subcontracting across council. Yeah, thanks, Stu.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a whole lot of things coming off this action register that I don't think we've actually completed, and we just need to keep an eye on them, and this is one of them, because the outcome is to deliver the development of a 5-year delivery plan for services that can be delivered or packaged in-house in a different way. So it just disappears and we hear about it in 5 years' time. I think it just needs to sit there front of mind when we do these things, whether they can be delivered in a different way. A reminder to ourselves as well as the officers. So I think this particular one should stay on there.
Yeah, I think actually on that point we might amend the action so our roadmap can come back to council perhaps at the next meeting on what that looks like, because I looked at that and I personally, I know the officers will hate me for this, but I thought half of this could be done in the first 6 months rather than 5 years, and we did have this conversation earlier around how we have this as a key focus for the Chief Executive for those that were at that meeting. I mean, this one and the next one, small trades, the small trades went on in November or December last year, and when we've got in front of us 2 years of 12% and 12%, these should be real focuses of everyone who has a budget on how we can deliver these things more efficiently. So the small trades and the one we just discussed, Councillor Pittington, should be really, really high priority because it's about doing things more efficiently, saving money for the ratepayer. So I agree, but I think the Chief Executive has picked that up. Go now to quarterly reports. That's removed. Councillor Pye, are you, Councillor, comfortable with that?
That was just on infrastructure projects, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, that one was, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, no, happy with that one.
Yeah. Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just not yet convinced in terms of how these comms are going to be delivered to the councillors. I'm just not yet convinced. I understand. I see this here that says this is the most suitable place for current information. As such, this appears in multiple places, and we'll be advised of that. I suppose it's a bit of watch and see, really, or if we need some training in this area as well as to how to access this information. Because I just would have preferred that update to come directly to us in our mailbox as they come through.
Yeah, so are you, yeah, I mean, it's coming through with the Panui weekly, but are you, would you like it coming more formally?
I would, but I'm happy to, if everybody else is happy with this, I'm happy to see how it goes. And perhaps I'll be like Councillor Booth and I'll just get a big wad of paper every month, I don't know.
I mean, the key thing, this is about no surprises, so we're not getting what's a good example? A Caroline Bay waterfall come to us, just when the digger's moving in. It's just to know ahead of time the work programs, isn't it? So,
or just after, as the case may be.
Just
with waterfall.
We laugh now. Yeah, okay. We'll just keep an eye on that from a governance point of view. Move now to underutilised assets.
This is another one in the same category. I mean, I've got a paper coming later that says peppercorn rental, underutilised, not sure. We haven't even started this. I have no confidence in this coming off the action register. We've still got hundreds of properties that we haven't seen or know about, and if we take it off, it just disappears.
Yep. So leave it on. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So wouldn't require an update for the next meeting. Template for financial impacts. Work is in progress. Mr. Chief Executive, are you comfortable that that's in play? Sorry, I'll just get this. Andrea, as far as the template for financial impact. Okay, as and when required. Councillor Piddington.
My only concern with that is it says this is a work in progress. So is it done or not? Because if I'm the same, it stays on there until we have a agreed template, or is it done, or are we just still working on it? Sorry, Andrea.
I think the view is every document that comes up for either an approval of an asset item or anything, the financial impact must be now in that document. We talked about that just recently, so that needs to be in there. So it should be stock standard in everything that comes to you. That's the one. Am I referring to the right one?
Yeah.
Financial impact.
If it's been implemented and it's starting, because if we look at some reports, council reports we got the last round,
Yeah.
it wasn't in.
No, we talked about that last week.
Yeah.
And yes, it has to be in from now on.
I'm with Councillor Scott. I'm happy for it to come off when we've seen it and it's happening.
Yeah, well, just that's fine.
Papers today that don't have it, so,
Yeah.
and that's not a criticism, but I don't want to remove stuff before the system is in play.
Yeah, agreed. Everyone comfortable with that? Leave it on? Yeah, cool. Social housing. Coming to the September meeting, still just needs to stay in place until we've seen that. You're all good, Rach. Thank you. Then we've got water updates. So we've got a meeting workshop scheduled on 27th of August. That's fine. Asset management program.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just note in the update it says that we will be recruiting full-time FTE to complete this work. So can I have an explanation on, well, not an explanation, sorry. Can I ask the need for that? Recruiting for the role? It's new.
Yeah, basically we had a person in that role and they've resigned. So we've got a vacancy. We're going to fill the role. It is quite important. It involves a lot of data analysis and actually working out, what is the condition of our assets, and we're from there modelling that into long-term renewal programs and maintenance programs. So it's specialised work. The alternative is getting a consultant, which is certainly not desirable.
Doesn't say that. It says that due to a secondment, this piece of work is not yet complete. Currently moving to recruit a new team member for this role. So really, there's a vacancy and we're filling it.
I should have put, following resignation, we are filling. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Council-owned properties. Again, Councillor Piddington.
So, same thing. We've seen one tranche of however many we're getting. It comes off the action register when it's complete. And we need some time around those things. Again, it seems to be drifting out.
I almost feel like with this one and the underutilised assets, we're getting confused, and in my mind they're two different things. I would like just to see a list of all the assets we own, whether they're underutilised or not, which is different to the here's some underutilised ones we could look at disposing of. And so for that reason I think it needs to stay on there.
Yeah. No, all good. Everyone comfortable with that? Next one is website updates to be automatically sent to councillors. Can't remember what that was in regard to. Same. Yeah. Do we need it on? Is everyone getting updates? Yep. Nod or shake? No, leave it on. Yeah, it does feel a little bit of a repeat. So we'll take that off then, eh? Yeah, okay. Then the final one is coastal erosion at Red Ruth, and we had that report. And we've got another report coming on the 17th. So it still needs to stay until it's been completed. Getting ahead of ourselves. That's all right. Anything else regard to the actions report, team? No. So we'll go back. Recommendation is just receive and note. We've picked up those changes. Thank you. I'm happy to move that from the Chair. Councillor Scott, thank you. Put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Go now to 9.3 on page 33 and the interim 23-24 KPI and draft financial performance report. Welcome. By yourself, no one wants to join you, Andrea.
So the KPIs are collated by individual managers through the year and are reported into the annual report.
Sorry, Stephen, do you want to just pull the microphone your way a little bit, just to thank you?
So this is the interim KPI for the financial year, which is reported up to the end of June. These are reported by staff through the year. You see the quarterly ones, but this is the annual one. It's self-reported, so any queries you probably have to put to the various GMs. And for the financial ones, I could probably hand over to Andrew here.
So just before they carry on, the first 3 or 4 pages is highlights of activities and issues, and I think that that's quite a fulsome report. You can see there's been quite a lot of activity going on in all the areas. Highlights of like emergency exercise practice out of the airport for the helicopter crash. We're continuing to work and beef up our emergency management in the light of potential threats. Our building control team have been recognised with an excellence award, I think that's something that they should be really proud of. So well done, Jason and team. And then the planning process has gone through their art gallery, highlights of the exhibitions they've had, along with libraries as well. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see there's been a lot of activity. On the KPIs, 81% of them were achieved, 19% were. There's on the next 2 or 3 pages are the ones where of most significance that weren't achieved, and some of these are quite, in my mind, quite difficult targets, and some you would wonder why we couldn't achieve them, and some of them are quite a long way apart from the target, so we might want to discuss those. Financial result, our revenue and expenses, we had a 1.3 surplus. However, sitting under that is an issue. And that issue is there is $15 million of non-cash items sitting in our revenue, that being the bringing on to the books of the Aoraki Stadium at 12.8 and our vested assets at 3 point something. Now, if you had taken those away, the council would have had about $11 million deficit. And as you read through the next pages, you can see which areas were under and over in their various areas. Overall revenue, the rates were relatively bang on in terms of what we had budgeted and what we had received. I'm just trying to get to the right page so that I can relatively bang on. Our salaries were 800 over, but we haven't capitalised all the salaries that the budget is sitting in the capital item. So that will come down. I haven't got my glasses, so I'm struggling to see, so apologies. Fees and charges were The next line, subsidies and grants, 12.6 million under. The biggest one there is the museum and theatre at 6.8, and there is a number of other subsidies to do with other activities. The next line, 1.9, we're down. There's predominantly, from memory, a lot of the consents for buildings. We're down on our consents processes and the like. Other revenue, 16.5 over. That is where our vested assets come in. So with the 15 million I talked about earlier, shows up there. Finance, we had budgeted a lower interest rate than we received, plus we had some additional cash to invest. So that was 2.7 over. Dividend revenue, we didn't budget for this, and there was $1 million received in other development funds. Spoke about personnel costs earlier, 886 over, but again, some more of that's to be capitalised. Depreciation expense, following the revaluation last year, the budget was set prior to that being completed, so the budget was always going to be understated. The finance costs, we budgeted on a lower interest rate, and therefore the real interest rate we paid was higher, so 3.1 over there. And our other expenses, 683 over, which was relatively close to budget. All the next pages are our different service lines that make up those results, and all of us are now open to questions, all the officers, as you want to fire them at us.
Alrighty, who wants to go first? Does anyone different want to go first? We'll start with Councillor Piddington.
Yeah, my first question around the libraries. The wrong seals were installed on the new double glazed windows of the Timaru Library, which caused them to leak. That has now been fixed. Who paid for it, and was there any damage while they were leaking? $6.3. Yeah, page 36.
Okay, so can you hear me? It's okay. Thank you, Councillor Piddington. This would have come from our CapEx budgets as well. I don't know whether there's been any damage associated with it, but I can find that out. But we would have ended up having to fix that.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Did they pay for it, or did we? I'm trying to work out. That's probably a major job, replacing all those seals. I just want to make sure those that installed it paid for it, and they paid for any damage that was caused by it.
Thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood. I'm not entirely sure because that was before my time, but I will find out exactly what happened with that one.
Anything further, Councillor Piddington, while you've got the mic?
Yeah, just a question around the Temuka Alpine Energy Centre leaking roof, and it's said it's unbudgeted. How major is that? Musical chairs.
Thank you, through the chair. Councillor Piddington, we've just recently done a condition report, and during that condition report we found some water behind some of the walls where the toilets are and discovered it's coming from one corner of the roof area. For some time we've known that roof is due for a replacement. It has been up there for quite a number of years, and we've been patching, but this has actually caused a little bit more water damage than we anticipated. So I'm just going through some costings now whilst we're finishing off some of the EQP works, and I will come back to Council with a full paper, all that information and the details in the condition report for you.
So we've got it budgeted somewhere for a new roof on that centre?
No, we haven't, because I wasn't able to put that through the budgets in this LTP. So I can nurse it along a bit longer, but I do have to address the corner of this leak. But I will come forward with a full report for you with the condition.
Okay. Two more questions and I'm done. It said somewhere there was a $3 million $3.1 million Parks Capital Grant not received. I'm just intrigued as to what the Parks Capital Grant was.
What page was that, Councillor Piddington?
41, I think.
Thanks.
47. It was in the budget lines.
Was it the $2 million or was it?
It was 3.1, it said.
3.1, because $2 million of that would be the Better Off funding. That was for new walkways, cycleways. But yeah, and I'm not sure about the other grant because yeah, the only one I can think of would be Seaplay. And there was still some funding to be received for that.
I guess my point is if we can have fuller reports, I mean 3.1 is a significant number and I'd like it broken down. I guess my other concern is Parks unbudgeted building maintenance and a memorial. Not so much was unbudgeted, but it's $845,000. So I guess I'm concerned in two ways. If we give someone a budget, how can they spend $845,000 more than they've got? And when they tagged on memorial, I wanted to know what the memorial was and the cost of that.
I would have to get you more details around that, but yeah, I know the job was where the facing stone on the memorial was peeling off, yeah, due to water seepage through there. So it was specialised work, but I'll give you more details.
Is that the memorial down on the corner just here?
No, it was the one up by the hospital there, the main Anzac one.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, again, it's concern around finances. Unbudgeted professional fees, corporate planning, $222,000, park and rec, $171,000, water, $180,000, parking, $198,000. So unbudgeted professional fees last year came to $771,000. That's without the consultants, and if I add that in, we're $1.3 million of unbudgeted professional fees. Again, how can that happen?
In December when I got here, we had, I think it was 4 consultants doing the LTP, so that's a big chunk of it. We also had some consultants, I think, on the district plan, so that's a big chunk of it. Also, there were consultants on City Town, and there was another consultant doing something to do with health and safety, or from memory. Is that correct? Yeah, risk. So when I got here, there were quite a number, and none of those were really budgeted for.
I guess that's my question to you going forward though, Nigel. 1.3 million in unbudgeted
going forward.
Professional fees. How can someone with a budget, and there's 4 cases there outside what you're in charge of almost 200,000
All I can say is at that time the decision was made to bring consultants in to do those roles, and they weren't budgeted. Now we have a rigorous process of when and if we bring consultants in. My anticipation is this year so far there's only going to be one, possibly, and that's to do with water. But no decisions made on that. And when we go through our process for the water reforms that we have to do, we don't have a budget for that. So my aim is to try and do it within, but if we don't have sufficient resource, we may have to. That's the only one I can think of this year. Is anyone else can think of any others?
Yeah, I'll just clarify the parks one was the Section 17A review, and we, council, wanted to have further information around the options of that. That wasn't budgeted at that time. Parking one was to do with the Sophia Street car park, and because that was unplanned urgent works, and we had to get in works to do the building assessment and also looking at options.
Thanks. Yeah, good questions. I think part of it though is, when we're looking at things that are unbudgeted, within a business environment, if something's unbudgeted, you have to make a sacrifice somewhere else. So I think that's probably the key thing that we want to get across is if you're spending unbudgeted money, any unbudgeted money really, I believe, needs to come through to council, and if we need to change delegations, that be the case, because we want...
You're a lot more subtle than me.
However, in saying that, when come December, we're on the other expenses line, we were way over budget. We were heading towards 2 or 3 million over budget. We have pulled that back. So current year end was 683. So we made a big attempt to pull it right back, and I think we succeeded there in terms of the best we could at that time.
Righty, we're going to Councillor Shannon, and then I'll come back over this side.
Thank you. First of all, I actually think it needs to be noted, although we're highlighting a lot of opportunities here, a lot of these KPIs represent some very, very good work. So I'd like to personally say well done to all of our team in council here, some really good stuff. I was going to talk a little bit about professional fees, but I think I'd also like people to hear what our Chief Executive is saying, that going forward, professional fees, they have been highlighted, and we're going to see a lot less of them, and where we know they're going to be required, they'll be in the budget beforehand, and I think that's quite pleasing. On the Air New Zealand flight cancellations, just while you're here, I just wondered, please, Andrew, have you heard what's been the latest comms with Air New Zealand? Where are we at? Because this is becoming more and more concerning, particularly as we go into the summer and the holiday period, and even some of our people in this room are choosing to book flights out of Christchurch instead of Timaru. So I'd like the latest on that, please. And also, I saw Beth over there, don't go away. I'm just quite keen to hear about the latest, how the recruitment plans are going for the pools for the summer, please. Andrew, thanks.
So in regard to Air New Zealand, we actually had a meeting with them last week, myself, Chief Executive and the Mayor, talking about that. We definitely raised that issue regarding the reliability of flights in and out of Timaru. They acknowledge it, but never really came up with a solution as such. The issues are the lack of planes, the lack of crew, the lack of engineers in repairing these. The planes are getting old, but they still intend to keep them in service until at least 2030.
One of the solutions that did come up is they are going to France where their manufacturer was France, wasn't it? Somewhere like that. And they're going to attempt to buy the patents to make the parts here.
Pretty sad, I think. That's a company like that not investing in the future and expecting people to get on planes that they're trying to reinvent. The first bit of good news they'll try and tell you is the fact they bought a plane that'll carry a couple of courier parcels across the Cook Strait, and it's electric. It's amazing. Well, sorry, people thinking like that have got no idea, and we're in trouble, quite frankly. So I think we should be looking at an alternative service to not sit here and just take it. We actually need to be thinking a little bit broader.
Is that regard the airport? Sorry, the planes? No, sorry. We are up to Councillor Jackson, and then we'll go Councillor. Oh, sorry. We'll answer Beth's come up to answer the poll question. Sorry, and then we'll come back over here to Councillor Jackson, and then to Councillor Booth.
Thank you, and I would like to also confirm in response to Councillor Piddington's question that the company that did the incorrect install were the ones who footed the bill for that as well. In response to your question, Councillor Shannon, around the timeframes for the summer recruitment, I can confirm that ads should be up for that next week. We have a comprehensive timeline between mid-August and the opening on the 15th of November. Ads go up next week. We'll do a bulk recruitment for that. We're also recruiting a number of people who worked for us last season as well, so that's well underway.
Thank you, and as that comes out, can you share that with us, please, and we'll promote it as well.
Sorry?
As it comes out, can you share that with us too, please?
What exactly would you like to know?
The campaign?
Yeah, sure,
Campaign.
not away.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not too many morsels left after Stu Pillington's been at the buffet, but I love the way it's set out. It's fantastic, and I don't know if I've noticed it before being set out this way, but it seemed to be really easy to understand, so well done to everybody involved with those KPIs, etc. Just one of the things that Stu was touching on there was about the parks, other costs, 845 over budget. All I was going to say about that was more to do with the building maintenance. That was unbudgeted, so just a bit more clarity about the building maintenance and the budget around that and what we're doing with that. So with the parks, with the building maintenance.
Building maintenance.
Yeah.
Page 47, Andrew.
Yeah, page
if that
47.
is-
Thank you.
I just want to get a better overview for our ratepayers regarding what sort of building maintenance budget we have and how we're looking after that and maintaining it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the building maintenance is, but yeah, the monument one I did talk about before. But the building maintenance, I think we did demolish an old club rooms building in Temuka Domain. That was part of it, and there would have been perhaps some other buildings that are related to those domains, in there. But I'd have to get you the exact details of that.
I guess what I'm asking is, as far as the building maintenance budget, what sort of budget do we have in place for these? I mean, obviously we're over budget. Well, that's unbudgeted money, so do we have enough budget to look after our other buildings moving forward?
To be honest, this is part of the asset management plan that we're currently developing. So this is, looking at what is the long-term renewal program of our buildings within our parks and reserves. So different to social housing and those particular buildings. But we've got the Botanic Gardens, for instance, another number of buildings there that need to be maintained. And also the Washtite Farm area as well. So we are in the throes of planning that, and we will get better at budgeting it. Yeah.
Well, while I don't have the exact figure here, Councillor Jackson, we do have very lean maintenance budgets right through the organisation. And that's just part of an organisation that is, struggling with its cost structure. So typically when you're setting budgets, one of the first things that give are maintenance budgets. Yes, we can argue that's not right, but that is the state for the next year or two.
So can we expect then, if that's the case, to see more unbudgeted maintenance coming through?
It depends on what happens with those buildings, because we are, typically you should have 80%, which is planned maintenance, 20% breakdown. We're probably the opposite. We are mainly attending to breakdowns, and when you're attending to breakdowns, you don't quite know what's going to happen. So again, that's why those asset management plans are so important.
We're reactive instead of proactive, and we have been for decades. In all reality, that's why you had to do the $2 million fix up of the library, and the theatre royals fall into bits and all those sort of things. And they're the big examples that everyone sees without all the little ones. That's the challenge of this era of governance, if you like. So, Councillor Jackson, that was you finished. Yeah, Councillor Booth.
Thank you. First of all, I've got a couple of questions, but first of all, a comment in regards to performance environmental services. They, on page 39, that looked quite concerning to me. It looked like a disaster, quite frankly. So I'm surprised that someone said it was okay. Target 150, 22. Target 90%, 0. Target 80%, 44% achieved. So that's a comment, which is a little bit concerning, and obviously it rolls into a lot of stuff.
Would you like, Mr. Cooper, your follow-up questions? Yeah, let's maybe get a comment in regard to those, and then we'll go to your next questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Booth, have you got a question for me?
No, it was a comment.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Can you explain why your portfolio is acting or not really performing at a decent sort of level.
Why we're not hitting the targets?
Well, look at those numbers, they're terrible.
Yeah. Which is, I take it, the resource consents, you're okay with that? Did you mention that? Do you want me to go through that?
The whole, no, well, just in general, the whole four of them.
I'd argue that we are performing at a high level. I'd argue that we're not meeting the targets in here that would reflect that. For example, in alcohol licensing, a lot of that relies on police being available at the same time that our officers are available to go and inspect premises. But also, we've taken on 2 new staff this year, and that's required the expertise that we do have in our chief licensing inspector to be a good portion of our time has been training those other 2 staff members to get up to speed. So it's not the must-dos in terms of servicing the District Licensing Committee have been done. The complaints have been 100% attended to, but this particular target here has not been achieved. Yeah.
So are these here not realistic KPIs for your department?
I think they are realistic when everything is as it should be. So when you've got a full team that's fully trained and hitting their stride, and police are available to go out with officers, then I think it's perfectly reasonable to be expecting 80% return on that target.
Have you have you experienced a drop off in people building consents, people wanting to do stuff?
I think there's a 7 or 8% drop in consent numbers for building consents. What's dropped off is revenue, which suggests to me that the complexity and value of the work being done is what's changed, although yes, we are getting fewer consents.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Yeah.
I'll go to now page 53, which is the cash, 63. Thanks, Paul. So this is the statement of cash flow. And I'm just looking here at, you've indicated, Andrea, the interest received was 6 million. And you've indicated that we're getting around 6%. So that would indicate to me that we've got 100 million sitting around that we've actually been getting $6 million of interest. I can only assume that that is actually perhaps some realisation of some interest rate swaps. But of that 6 million, how much was cash that you received?
That is the cash that we've received.
So you got so we've got 100 million sitting around getting 6%.
There's been ins and outs throughout the year. Yep.
So how much debt have we got if we've got 100 million sitting around?
We haven't got 100 million sitting around, but we've got interest rate swaps that are generating revenue.
Okay. So if I take that as our cash that we've received, that would mean that we've had 117 million cash in against a depreciated or a budget of 128. So yeah, I guess we're down. We're still running quite a low or quite a high unbalanced budget. The other thing I was just looking at was the financing activities. You've got there 15 million. So was that 15 million for the entire year?
That was new borrowings in the 2023-24 year, yes.
Okay, so we only took on an extra 15 million in that period of time?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'd like to move my attention to my favourite subject, vested assets.
Put your seatbelts on, everyone.
I thought I'd already covered it.
Yeah, I thought he had too.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, you've got, as a trustee of the Stadium Trust, we basically, the value of that, it was underwater. So we actually abandoned that asset to the benefit of the council because it had liabilities. So the first, for the purposes of the transfer, there was a valuation done by Colliers, and they did it as fair value, and it came at 1.8 million. So then, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure who asked anyone to do it, but they went off and got another valuation, and based on a different scenario. And so that was based on depreciation, and pretty much lifted the value of that abandoned asset to 14 million, of which we are now taking the credit of 12.5 million in income, which is not money, it's actually a liability. And we're going to have to rate our people for the fact that that's now a new asset. So, and for what reason, what purpose? All we're doing is we're actually just deflecting away the fact that we're running an unbalanced budget. I cannot understand why. I've read both valuations, that the first one said 1.8 fair value, and the second one said 14.7, but fair value was 12.6. So that means 1.8 against 12.6. That's unbelievable. And why would we do that? Because that is a liability, that building. So all we're doing is adding it as an asset to our, which we have to depreciate and charge our ratepayers for. I just cannot see the mindset that we would do that. So I guess first of all, the valuation, upon whose authority was that done and why? Because probably when we vested that asset, that should have been quite clear in that report to us as trustees. So, yeah, I'm interested to know, Andrew, why that has occurred.
I guess from Timaru District Council's perspective, if we've been essentially given an asset or gifted an asset, we actually still have to maintain and look after that asset. It still has a life that we still have to look after. And so to be able to look after that, we then have to put it in our books as a fair value so that we can then recover the depreciation to then be able to maintain that building going forward.
If I can chip in here. So effectively, the trust surrendered the lease of the land. And in the lease document, when you do that, it means the assets on that land transfer to the council. So that asset did transfer to the council. Now, for accounting standards, you then have to bring it onto the books. So the valuation was completed to bring it onto the books. That valuation we'll be looking at what it will cost to replace less is used life. So you've only got the remaining life on the books of 14 million. And therefore, to put it on the books, it has to come through the revenue stream for the asset to get on the books. We wouldn't be able to have a asset sitting there at zero when it actually does have value. Now we can argue whether it does or doesn't, but the valuer is telling us it's got value.
And it's going to be a bigger problem looming as we revalue our vertical build and put depreciation against those assets into the future as well. So it's not going away.
Yeah, well, I've seen in the valuation also says is that the market value includes the land. So the land was already owned by the council.
Yeah, correct.
So why was that included in the valuation?
I believe the value is just the building.
And the problem that we've had historically is that we haven't depreciated to the true value of the asset, and that's why we've got the rate increases that we are doing at the moment to to make up for the underrating effectively. So if we want to keep under depreciating our assets, then great, you're going to have a...
But it's not, it's a liability, it's not worth, it's negative. And that's the value it should have been put into the council, because it is a negative, because what it's going to cost to fix, if you know what I mean. To make it, you can't, it's crazy they put it at 14 million.
But if it gets a fix and then it's worth X, it still has a useful life, that's the thing.
Well, yeah, okay, well, the two valuations, one was 1.8 and the same methodology on the second valuation was 12.6. That's just unbelievable.
Councillor Piddington.
So I was just, with Alan, I was a wee bit confused, because when we got the one, as trustees, when we got the 1.8 million, I thought we were going back to complain about that because it was too high. So I'm not sure, yeah.
Oh, right.
That's what we felt, so I'm not sure whether that got done. But I guess the follow-up where I'm getting a bit confused is, yes, there are two options going forward. One's to do up that building and the other's to bowl it and build a new one. If next year or later this year or whenever we decide to bowl it and we've got an asset value of 14 million, what happens to that write-off?
So the decision on what we do with it in the future doesn't come in the equation at the moment because no decisions have been made. What the value would look at is that building and value it in terms of the remaining useful life. That's what's come on. Hang on, if I finish. If we choose to demolish it, then it'll be written off. So we could be sitting here next year with a write-off of 14 million if we decide to bowl it.
Okay. Can we get clarity around the land, though? Because it does say that. And we already own the land.
Yes, so I will. These numbers are still subject to audit as well. So once we go through the audit process, the auditor may pick up a similar conversation. I just think back to an example where 30th of June, we sold some land last year to TDHL for $1.1 million. They revalued it at $9 million within that same period of time. So from a group perspective, essentially it's a similar scenario.
I think it was the interpretation of the instruction given by our council officer to the valuer, and they were asked to exclude the maintenance schedule because that would be a different budget. So it's what you ask for is what you get, and why would be asking for that? That seems crazy to me.
Alrighty, out this way. Questions? Councillor Scott.
I have several questions just on the activity highlights and issues and KPIs. That's probably where I start. So building, I just had a question around building control, 6.7. It says there that the changes that the new coalition government are looking at implementing will provide further challenges to the building regulatory system with many unknown factors on how these will impact on BAU. Just out of educational purposes, what are some examples of that?
From a regulatory perspective, the granny flat legislation, through you, Your Worship, forgot that bit.
No, you're right, let's go for it.
Through the granny flat legislation, the intent being good, but in a system that relies on the liability being carried by council officers, if we aren't involved in inspecting and ensuring a certain standard is met, and then we may end up doing compliance work or corrective actions later on, it places us in a very difficult situation that's yet to be worked through, and what that might look like, which is, most of that was covered in our submission, which came to committee, I believe, in the previous meeting.
Challenges. So I knew of that challenge, but okay.
Another one might be the amendment to the earthquake-prone building legislation.
Yeah.
For example, where if there's pushing out the timeline and giving building owners an extra 4 years is the headline grabber. That's what everybody's talking about. But sitting beneath that, there are a number of different changes. And the merits of that extending it is from a regulatory perspective, is you could be just delaying things so things are a little bit worse in 4 years' time. It depends. But some of the other changes that are coming through underneath that, of a smaller, more technical nature, are putting compliance work onto councils without the ability to recover costs. So there's some issues in there that are yet to manifest and to be fully understood because that hasn't gone through the system yet.
Okay, nice, thank you, Paul. 6.14 recreational facilities. So I was a little bit concerned to read car parking at Sea Bay becoming an issue. But my question is, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, are we looking at solutions? Is it peak times? Is this another thing that is unbudgeted?
Just before you answer that, in 12 minutes, there's going to be a fire alarm drill. Just a test.
Oh, okay, thank you. Is that to tell me to shush?
Thank you, Councillor Scott. At this stage, there are no plans to do anything specifically with the car parking. There are definitely peak periods, particularly around when there's school sports and swim school. There hasn't been any specific strategic direction around what we should be doing with the car parking, but we have had significantly increased membership, so it's bumped up by about 200 even in the last 12 months as well. So it is an issue. How we're going to proceed with that will also depend on what we do with our asset management, but future planning for the stadium as well, I would assume.
Sorry to go back to Temuka Alpine Community Centre. We talk about it required significant maintenance, and we've just heard that we hadn't even, got any budgets in there for, re-roofing. And I just want to come back to, that is such a concern to me, that we already knew it needs significant maintenance, that's what's written there, where we have no plans in the next 10 years to fix it. So again, that management of maintenance is becoming incredibly alarming, that again, a significant asset to our district doesn't even have a maintenance program and no budget. So I think I'd like to talk about that again on how, do we have any costs? We know it's going to cost 1.2 million or 3 million to do the library roof. Well, what are we talking? Frames.
Thank you, through the chair. So we've, as I said, we had a condition report. I did put forward in October, November last year quite an extensive maintenance request in the LTPs, but a lot of it was actually removed through the processes. Again, understanding everybody was under pressure, but what I did say at the time was that if then there were unbudgeted items and I was moving into reactionary, I would come to council with those. Now, we have been doing some earthquake-prone works which have got a budget, and that's carried forward from last year into this year. I'm anticipating being able to do a lot of the refresh in that building with that. The roof was something that came as a surprise when I had the recent condition report done. So that has been over and above, and I am getting all of that priced up at the moment. We've got the costings for the earthquake-prone works, which will capture some of what I wanted to do. I just don't have a cost for the repair of the roof, which I'm doing. Part of the asset work, I have a new software system, which I started work on a year ago to get implemented, and my team have already begun to transfer all of the assets within the property area into that software, where we will be able to then do full condition reports. We will be able to forecast past 10 years and out, which will also give an indication of a renewal of a building. The department for some time has been working off Excel spreadsheets across lots of areas, and it was something that we couldn't continue to do. So we've definitely lifted the game. We've started that work, and we will be fully commissioned into the Archivist system most definitely by February, but we're a third of the way transferring everything in now. All social housing is, and others are following. So it is very much underway from my perspective. Yep.
Thanks, Nicole. Peel Forest landfill 6.2. We say in here Peel Forest closed landfill remediation is underway with the expected work scheduled to be undertaken in September, October. Do we have a final budget? And because we received a paper from Jackie on options, I was interested to see that we're underway. And do we have our ECAN fund thingy?
Okay, what is underway at the moment is that we have lodged a resource consent application with ECAN that has been processed as we speak, and we've also submitted an application for the Hazardous Sites Fund, again through ECAN. So, and that will be considered, I believe, in September. So we will awaiting that. It could be substantial funding for council if successful. So we need to just hold until that decision is made. But as I said, the consent is still being processed anyway. So, but contract documentation has been completed, so we can go to tender reasonably quickly.
There's a little bit, not what's underway, but our work, it's not actually got diggers in the, well, not in the ground. Okay, just a bit of terminology there, thank you. Just under KPIs, page 38, volunteer recruitment. Sorry, let me find the page. It was for recruit and train volunteers to maintain team capacity. This is for, you know what I'm talking about, response team. I just wondered, how do we promote this and call for volunteers? If it's continuing to be challenging, then why are we continuing to do the same old, same old? Do we need to think outside the square on how we're calling volunteers, and what support can we give you as councillors to help, fly the flag?
Through you, Your Worship, I think if as many councillors as possible attend the up-and-coming training for EOC awareness, if you like, so that councillors have an understanding of how that fits together and what actually happens in there during an event. I think that'll be useful. And then speaking at any opportunity you get in the community about preparedness, referring people to the new booklet that questions whether or not we're ready as a community. Invariably, we're not ready enough. And that's got some great information in it to guide households and businesses about how to be prepared for loss of power, water and other things. In terms of struggling to recruit, I think it's not in reference to the 69, it's in reference to the response team, which is quite, it's reasonably demanding, as in they have to meet regularly, train regularly, do the go through very specific training to try and work towards becoming accredited, and that's where we are, and that requires commitment from those individuals. So it's the bulk of the volunteers that we use for example, in our civil defence centres or welfare centres in the old vernacular, we're good in that regard. Communities are quite keen to get involved and help where they can. It's these specialist roles in the response team that we are struggling with. And I think we will have to do some sort of campaign to try and recruit, be more, raise the visibility and profile of the team. We might actually go to Stephen Doran and maybe do some work in the media, promote that way, but we have got some work to do, yeah, because it's obvious that we want a team here in Timaru, and given the AF8 scenario, we'd certainly be a lot better off having those highly trained individuals volunteering in our district. So.
More question on roading and footpaths. I feel like that's the same topic as your traffic management, but I just had, there was a percentage in there around sealed road network and footpath network that was not achieved to full budget spent or constrained budget. And so my question is, why wasn't the budget set to meet the KPI? So wouldn't you, how can you be constrained if your budget meets your KPI?
The constraint is around NZTA subsidy and coming in there, so, and also affordability. So it is, these are people's perception of the roading network. And there's sometimes their perception is a little higher than what our actual level of service is. So we set that level of service and we budget to that, but the people's perception can be slightly higher than that. So they say, well, it's not up to standard. It's.
I feel like sometimes we go the reverse though. Like I think of Mountain View Road and how many people called me about that road saying, why the hell are you resealing the pathways? They're perfect. So it's sort of like, it's an interesting scenario. Some people don't think we do a good enough job and some of us are saying, what were you thinking?
Yeah, what we would say is we're renewing that just in time. So it's not showing up deterioration, it's not doing those potholes or failing. So yeah, we do a lot of analysis around that, just in time.
Yeah, perfect. Councillor Booth, and then Councillor Pye. Thanks.
Andrea, just looking, I question about the 15 million. I'm looking at page 73 in our drawdowns last year. It says we borrowed 20 million, drew down 20 from the financing people. And I'm looking at our capital expenditure, 68 million this year, 68. There's a big gap. So whereas I looked at the actuals for last year, we were quite close to that 53 with the 40 million. And obviously there's surplus from depreciation collected on that year, but there's a hell of a gap for this year. Can you explain that to me?
So in your 68 million, you've got your 15 vested assets, so you take that down. So capital spend was only about 51 million. And you'll note that our cash surpluses are sitting quite low at this point in time. At the end of the financial year.
Vested assets isn't cash to pay for capital items though?
It's included in the 68 million.
So it's included in there, okay.
Yep.
So there's a number of 20 million. Yeah, so I guess just so
we have run our cash surpluses down.
So just to clarify that, on page 51, 68 million, that includes about 15.7 million of vested assets. So you're down to 53. On the cash flow, we shout out 54.8. Those two don't necessarily align because some of that payment would have been creditors that were sitting in our books, some of the cash flow. So there was always a difference between those two.
All right, okay, that's fine, thank you.
There are also accruals, that late invoices that have come into these figures as well from an expenditure perspective, but we physically haven't paid them.
I think you'll go to Councillor Pye. And then is there anyone else that's got a question just before we close off? No. Okay, Councillor Pye, thanks.
Thank you. I just have a few, but wanted to start with something Mr. Traynor covered briefly, and I think we have someone awarded a Young Professional of the Year, we should be naming them, and if Google proves right, I believe that was Liam Brown, and I just wanted to endorse your congratulations that you offered there, Mr. Traynor and the building team. That's my positive I'm starting with. I just had a question around 6.18 and the sewers, which is on page 37. It says that work is underway on an air discharge consent application for the Pleasant Point oxidation pond, and I think this is something I picked up in the infrastructure strategy. And what has changed that we now need these discharge consents? Because my understanding is that a new requirement, they're not existing, and do we not have existing use rights? Why would we suddenly need a consent?
This relates to, I guess, the new rule from ECAN and a more interpretation of the rule. We believe, yes, we have existing use rights on this. They believe differently, that we have to have a consent. So there is still discussion going on in the background on whether we actually need these or not. Yeah, but we're certainly pushing back because it's just going to cost money, to be honest. Yeah.
just say no. One question around that though, we don't want to be going to lawyers and consultants to go through consenting processes that we think we don't need. So are these conversations just happening in-house?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. And then just continuing on the consenting, because it's my favourite topic at the moment, the 6.19 around the stormwater. So we've got continued delays with resource consent processing by ECAN, and that was a result of a High Court decision. So how many, my understanding is the government announced some changes to the RMA which will fix that problem in the last week, but how many of our resource consents, stormwater discharges, is that affecting, and when will it start causing us some problems?
It's affecting all of them. We thought we were over the line with the Geraldine one, which was the first one that we lodged, but that apparently position has changed. So yeah, we're definitely keen to see the government changes that will, because it certainly affects the program going forward as well. We can't actually, do what we're planning to do without these consents. Yeah, so it has a flow-on effect.
So I didn't read the press release in detail. I'm good at reading headlines and not the detail, but do we expect that to be a fast fix by government, or is it going to be a 6-month waiting game where we can't do things for 6 months?
I'm not sure at this stage.
Thanks. I had another question around the closed landfill reports on 26 sites, and yet we expect that there will be areas that require some immediate work out of the reports. So a question around that is, do we have anything in the budget for that? Which probably then leads me on to a more general statement around, I think when we're operating in budgeted deficits, I think we need to be very, very closely monitoring our financial performance, and I would like to see monthly financials with reforecasting, and I'd love to see a list of the issues that we know but we don't know how much it's going to cost. For example, the stadium. There's a number of them in here, and I fully support that. If it's not budgeted for, we have to give something else up. We can't get to the end of the year and go, oh, there was all this work, we didn't have a budget, and that's why we're over. So it'd be really good going forward to see those issues listed, that, the things that we know, even if we don't know the amounts. Sorry, and then I had, back to my old chestnut of waste management, while you're there, Mr. Dixon. Looking at that report, I mean, I know this has been an ongoing problem, but we get to the end of the year, and excuse me while I'm just trying to scroll to the right page, and we are, 2.3 million behind in our fees and charges. We're 1.5 over in our other expenses, but we've also $1.2 million over in our capital expense. I struggle to understand, especially around capital, how we just keep going, or is it just the one project that we blew out by 1.2 million, or how can we be so far over on our capital budget? And can you assure me again that this year's budget on the operating, we have ironed out whatever issues we've had that have caused these massive discrepancies?
The additional capital spend is predominantly around unplanned works. So we had a landfill fire down there in a cell. So as a result of that, we found there was insufficient water supply, so we had to put in a new fire main through to that new cell site where the fire happened. So that cost us money. The other thing was, with the installation of the new organics plant, there was insufficient power supply, which we didn't realise at the time. It was Alpine wasn't enough power to the site, and they needed a new transformer. So it's just these things that come up, but yeah, we should be recovering that through the waste charges at a later date, and we're certainly planning for that this year. So that you see the waste charges have gone up quite substantially.
Thank you.
I think through you, Mr. the Mayor and Councillor Pye. I think you make good points because this waste minimisation ran a deficit of 833, and when we have other councils depositing waste in our landfill, effectively we're subsidising it. So effectively we do need to take this area quite seriously. The fees and charges, why that is way under is again the Peel Forest. It was put in the budget. We would collect fees on that Peel Forest. Rubbish being dumped there. I'm not quite sure why the other expenses are over. Probably the other side of it, is it?
Yeah, any money that we spend on Peel Forest, we put through a provision in 21-22 of about $7.9 million. So any costs associated with that, up until that point, are covered. The additional $6 million that Andrew's talking about is essentially going to be cash to pay for that. So then there'll be a smaller borrowings associated with that. So we don't get that, then we'll have to be borrowing the $7.9 million to physically pay for it.
Just something for the Chief Executive. About 4 people have touched on, I guess, building maintenance programs. The roof at Alpine Energy at Temuka. We've got a theatre in Geraldine. Can we actually get a list with an approximate cost? Because I get the point, we've been on your case to reduce costs, but it's no point in doing that if then you come up with a list of $5 million worth of stuff we actually have to do. So across the council, I want to know any maintenance cost we know are coming or needed in the next couple of years. We just need to know those numbers.
We did pull the capital money out for the reason that we actually didn't have that all lined up, and we wanted in this term to get all this next three-year period to get all that information. So it might be that there's amendments at subsequent annual plans, potentially once we have that information.
I guess my problem is every time we have a council meeting, there's another $500,000 that's popped up, be it air-conditioned HVAC units on the art gallery. We kind of knew about them, but we've tucked them away. I just want to have some transparency over that because we might have to make harsh decisions. You might have to say we've got to close Geraldine Theatre for a couple of years because we've got to do the roof on the Temuka Stadium or whatever, but I want to make those decisions knowing what the impact is, not doing them as they come up.
Yep. Okay, anything further? Thank you, Councillor Burt.
Now that I don't have a conflict, I was just... Yeah, so have I. So just going back to Peel Forest, those words don't generally come from my mouth, but it will from now on. So in terms of the contaminated sites and vulnerable land site landfill fund, did ECAN give you an indication of how successful that's likely to be? They generally have that sort of information, but also they usually only fund them at 50%, but there's a potential for 100%. The other thing is, given that when the new government came on board, they sent a very clear message and funded about 9 projects that were nowhere near the enormity of Peel Forest, and one of them just being actually St Andrews landfill right on the beachfront down in St Andrews and what have you. And given that, as councillors, we possibly should be looking at going to our MP and vigorously promoting that there's a potential for that hazard and the cost to our community and what have you. So that's that one. But go back to my original question, did they give you some sort of indication of the potential for success of that application?
Yeah, they indicated it was encouraging, that we potentially would get something. Certainly not 100% funded was what they indicated, but we could get around about 50% funding. So we'll wait and see. We have put our best foot forward. And they have supported it as well. So.
Fantastic. I mean, given the scope and the cost of that, even 50% is massive for us. So great, thank you.
Sorry, Nigel, I just had a follow-on question that Councillor Pye brought up around that sort of budget to actual variance. I know I think we cross purposes a little bit, but we're heading, we've indicated 2 years worth of deficits, and budgeting is one of our priorities that we put up our hand and as councillors and said this is such an important focus for us over the next 12 months at least. But I just wondered, it's so hard to track the variances that are coming, and I wonder whether we've asked for this before, but we need to take it more seriously around that month by month, budget variance spreadsheet, and I want to make it actually an action today, because it's incredibly difficult to stay within our targeted budgets when these variances are not forthcoming for us. And I think I just would like to know if there's support for that today, because surely it's easy enough to do, and you put notes out to the side, and each month we update those notes. This is just incredibly difficult.
I agree. We will make sure there's every council meeting there's a financial set of accounts and variances. The vast majority of these variances have been highlighted at past meetings. There's nothing's really changed. All of these variances were highlighted right throughout the year. The Peel Forest revenue, the fact that we had some additional maintenance and so forth, but we will do that. Yep. The fact that we're not going to get the 6.8 million, the fact that we da-da-da-da-da.
What I found really useful in other organisations is you've got your spreadsheet, the notes are next to the variance, and the new notes are in red.
Yeah.
So we don't have to keep going over
Yeah.
old stuff all the
Yeah.
time, and you can just focus on what's in red because
Yeah.
that's new, or whatever colour you want to put it in.
Perfect.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to draw your attention to page 33, which is the resolution or recommendation. So receive and note the report 1 and 2, the key performance indicators and the summary draft results. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Scott, Councillor Booth, thank you. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I am just conscious that Councillor Burt has to leave at 4:15, so I'm going to move the apologies for those that have been waiting as far as officers, but I'm going to move the agenda around. So we're going to go to 9.8, which is public consultation for performing arts, and then we're going to go to 9.5 following that, which is the representation review. So we'll go now to 9.8, and that's on page 139.
Through you, Your Worship. Apologies, this one took a little bit scrolling to get to.
No, it's all right.
This is presenting to you a really draft consultation document on future provision for performing arts in Timaru District. We'll take the report and the draft document as read. Some important things to note is that the decisions today are only to take alternative options out to the community for their feedback. We're not consulting on any specific building projects. These are just high-level options that officers have taken back and have considered that are practical and deliverable. This hopefully give the community the opportunity to give you some feedback on what option they think you should go ahead, which will help you make your decision in the long term. Any figures in the document are intentionally really conservative. They have a lot of contingency in them that reflects the state of the projects as they are. And they also contain some side costs, such as relocation of the library, which would be attached to certain projects. Hopefully this would tighten up as any selected project was matured, but we didn't want to initially present you with an overly optimistic view and then have to take it out to the community and then forced to revise upwards later. As noted earlier, the document presented to you isn't final. It's just a framework way of presenting the information as clearly as we can. Decisions around what options we take out to the community ultimately are with you. The document that was tabled as part of the agenda was solely based on just providing a fit-for-purpose theatre. What may be better for discussion is taking into account other facilities such as the museum and a picture of what they're commenting on. That would be reasonably easy to build into this draft. So depending on what steer you give us, that's where we would take it. Happy to receive any feedback and any questions you may have.
Awesome, thank you. And if we just, when we're working through this, and we'll sort of run this part of it in a bit of a sort of workshop fashion, I think, get the questions out. But if we just think, when you're casting your mind to how many options, etc., that you have a think about how you're going to consider the feedback from the community. So if we, as an example, if you have the multiple theatre options, heritage versus new, what does that look like with your consideration if, you know, one gets 32% and one gets 33%? I think it's worth sort of giving some thought to that now rather than it being an issue later on potentially. But we'll go now to questions. Who wants to, questions, comments, workshop, if you like. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I guess my first comment is regards the calling a submission for future provision for performing arts. We're talking about 3 key civic facilities. So it's like, perhaps we should be mentioning, it's a discussion about those actually, and obviously the theatre is one of those. So that was my first comment. I don't see the point of I think you've got too many options in here. I'd like to see that scaled back to 2 or 3 max. So I just don't think the refurb of the old theatre is just not going to fly, in my opinion. So I can't see why we'd go back there when we rejected it so resoundingly last time. So I guess that's my first, my thoughts. Thank you.
Councillor Booth. Councillor Pittington, sorry. Apologies.
Reflection. Look, first and foremost, I'm concerned we're rushing this. It's taken 5 or 6 years to get here, and I don't know why within 5 weeks we've got to rush out, because there's several things that concern me. We've had local architects come and say they want to save the library building. We hear the roof's knackered, we hear this and that. Before I make a decision to put a multi-purpose facility there, even if that's the way I want to go, I want to know exactly what state that library is in, because people I talk to say the roof isn't attached to the sides, whatever the technical term for that is, properly. I think Stacey will be able to help me, I need a full report on the library. Okay? A fit-for-purpose Theatre Royal, if we keep it, we need to talk to some people in it, because the report is the stage house stays. One of the driving forces for changing that theatre was to remove the stage house and put something proper in there. Earthquake-proofing it and putting a coat of jam on the inside doesn't make it fit for purpose. We need some thought into that. I have a problem around the numbers. We had an organisation locally come to us and tell us what they could deliver a project well under 57.1, that was their words, yet we go out at 67. I don't understand how that number has grown exponentially. And I need some rigour around that. I mean, I've got 20 other questions. If people to the community come and ask me, I can't answer them because we haven't been rigorous enough in our options being clear what we're actually voting for. So I just think we're rushing the whole thing. I'd rather take a couple of months, get all the reports, get that feedback, because the theatre people outside those who want to keep heritage might vote for a new one if they know nothing is going to change backstage. Are we putting a third story on? I don't know. There's just too many unanswered questions that I don't feel confident going out to the community to vote on without giving them that information.
I
Thanks,
think,
Councillor
sorry,
Councillor Scott.
I agree, and I think each proposal has their own merits, but there's a lot of background detail to help support the conversation. So, for example, like if we keep on the theme of the Theatre Royal, we know that the back of house loading bays, parking areas, and all of that are not fit for purpose, and that is what the community asked for. So we need to know, is that included? We need a better understanding of what is in and what is out, because an understanding of how that $30 million makeup, of that financial makeup, we haven't seen anything apart from just a number there. Are the TDC costs that were missed out of the last proposals in there? Are the deferred works in there? Are the fixtures and fittings, that the 1.3 million that was missed out, is that in there, the 30 million? I just feel each proposal needs its own, support paper. So we are really clear when we go out to consult, people are making informed decisions, because a new theatre, and I think this will be the concern for me, is that you'll get, with a new theatre in the Theatre Royal, you get people going, we want a brand new theatre, but we need to know what's in it. So they know they're making an informed decision. At the moment, those two scenarios will be very, very different. So my hope for today, if we're sort of workshopping out, I sort of wrote some things down that I would like to see more information about before we go out with a really solid consultation document, and we're really confident in what we're selling. We owe it to our community to do it properly and actually make really good decisions from there on in. And at the moment, I don't feel comfortable at all that we've received the information we need to even prove this. So I've got heaps of notes on each section, but just.
So what are the, Councillor Scott, I've written something down from Councillor Piddington in regard to full report on the library. What are some of the other reports as an example that you need to see? What are the things, so if we can work through and note down what we need to see to be able to take the next steps would be really helpful for this team, so they can go away and do that work program.
We don't have a budget for that work, and we can tell you what's in each option as far as we've got. And obviously, as you go through the process, it would refine up. So if you want us to go all the way through and get pretty worked up concept designs and costings, then that will cost us, and that will not come cheap. So if that is what you want, then we need the permission to do that.
No, I don't think you've understood what we've asked for. Well, what I'm asking for is just financials. How is the $30 million made up? Someone's put that number there. What does that include? For example, for the Theatre Royal, you've got $33.8 million for a new theatre. What is that? What is in there? We talk about that won't have enough seats. We won't have a point of difference for our community to our neighbours. Well, what is the seats?
We have QS numbers now if you want to go through those.
And another one, multi-purpose, 69.8. We know the figure that was presented to us was significantly less than that. What is the $20 million? No one has shown us anything. And we sit here and it's incredibly difficult to support the community when we have literally nothing.
In regards to the refurb theatre, there is a lot of information which is already there, which they base these numbers on from the QS. That's how they've come to that number. They proportioned it. No, I'm talking about the refurb on the theatre, which you talked about. Obviously, I think that the number used here, 57.1 for as the option, well, that was always probably a conservative number and was always going to be probably plus. And I can see that the plus has probably been put into the museum, library, theatre proposal. But whatever we do, even if you're to refurb that theatre, you're never going to be 100% MBS. And so pretty much, if we want to bring our 3 of our key civic facilities, we need to give the public the option to vote for a safe 100%, all of them brand new, full life. We need to give them that option. And even if it's $70 million, it's still cheap, because they're also on a strategic transport route of which we're obliged to sort them out. And this will do that. So have a think about that. Why are you dabbling in anything less than 100%? You're going to create a liability for the next group of people, because we chose to kick the can down the road and not make the hard decision, or put the options, sensible options, in front of the people. The people are not silly. They will see the logic in doing that whole thing if it's put on the table.
Councillor Whittington.
And I guess I'm a wee bit concerned we've narrowed the options. We said if a new theatre happens, it's on Barnard Street. Well, some of us were quite keen on Caroline Bay and we got told we wouldn't get a resource consent. On Saturday I was at Te Papa. It's about 2 metres above sea level. You know, I want some rigour around the decision of placement and other things as well, so we can go out to the people and say where these venues are actually going to be. There's just, I'm with Stacey, we just need that list behind that shows people that we've thought about it and we've been at least rigorous in our figures.
Mr. Doran.
That's really useful feedback. I mean, if we want to take stuff out like that, we can clarify those things. We did say on a council-owned property such as Barron Street, so we're not fixing it on any specific place. With the budgets for the level of consultation and the high level feedback you would want from the community at this point, we would say that we're not going to be able to get down to the granular detail. We've got good numbers for the theatre refurb, as much as we can get. We've got pretty good numbers for a multi-purpose centre. Again, we're not talking about a specific project, and we have, again, put some caveats on there, put some contingencies in there, because there are a lot of known unknowns, like things like how much it would cost to relocate the library somewhere else to run for a couple of years, and the power substation under the library and that sort of thing. So, I mean, again, we're being very conservative because we don't want to come back with a report sometime in the future saying it's going to be considerably more expensive than we said a couple of years ago. We have learned over time about presenting this sort of thing to you. But again, we have no strong feelings about going out for the public right now about it. It is down to your decision about what goes out to the public, what level of comfort and detail you want in that. What we're presenting now is the information we have to hand that we could take out to the community now that would get you a reasonably clear steer from them before the end of the year.
So all the numbers that we're using are from a QS, so they're from a professional. They've used the previous project as their case because they had actual numbers for that as their starting point. They have also talked to local builders in terms of their cost estimates. The cost estimates they've got from the local builders, they have added on contingencies. Plus, the other thing you've got to remember it's not just the build, there's also fit out in here, the fit out at the moment for the multi-purpose may be overstated. It's the 3 million for the museum, which was in the original project. It is also in the multi-purpose project. The $2 million for library fit out may be overstated, but again, we are going to have to move the library around. And there was $1 million for any meeting rooms and cafe and so forth. So the multi-purpose one is based on estimates, but we've added contingencies because we have heard consistently that we underbake contingencies. We may have gone slightly the opposite way, but at this stage, in terms of a concept, is the appropriate thing to do. The refurbishment of the theatre is based off the previous plan, and there is funding in there for back of house and stage strengthening. The whole works. And it is the 750 to 800 seat. The new build is a 550 seat new build theatre, and again that is based on the original plan in terms of what we need for a theatre and the square meterage. So that's the three options. They're based on relatively robust numbers, but if you want us to go deeper into that and get more precise, then we will need time, probably 3 months minimum, before we come back with a document.
I guess my question though is, you say it's based on QS for the new one, and I don't know the multi-purpose. I'm not sure I'm sold on that. But we had a local company come and be willing to sign a contract miles under what the QS said. So I'm a bit lost, and we're rigorous. When we had the theatre over here, we had a contingency of 2.3%, yet we whacked 10% on something someone's prepared to sign a contract on tomorrow, without going into the numbers. But I'm a bit lost, because if the number isn't 67, it's less than what our existing number of 57.1. That does change people's mind. So I want to go out and have some rig around that number, because there's $10 million difference that may sway votes. And I'm not saying that's what I'm going for, but that's what I mean around rigour.
Yeah, I guess from that point of view, it'd probably be a good idea then that our officers sat down and along with the Rawlinstons, and actually went through those numbers that we've
done that 3 times.
With
Rawlinsons.
With Thompson's?
With Rawlinsons.
You haven't done it with Thompson's though, have you?
But Thompson's will have to be careful, because you've got to go through a procurement process.
But surely that would be, if you all sat down, the three of us.
Rawlinsons have gone through it with Thompson's.
They have?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, that's the number, I suppose. But I've still got confidence in it.
Look, I think as part of any consultation, Mr. Doran's noted that they're conservative numbers. There's going to be to be some threshold in the numbers that we put out. It's within I don't know what it is, but that big number might have to be between what is the number, 69. So it might have to be it's between a 65 and a 70 to give something around, but I don't think we're going to necessarily be able to get to an exact. Potentially, let's go to Councillor Burt.
Just before that, remember the original plan was not 57.1. Like with this, it was 60.1. The 3 million fit out is in this number. The 3 million fit out, you have to add it to the 57.1.
Oh, there you go. I don't want to flog a dead horse, but if you're going to rely on those figures, and this, if I just delivered that out to the public now with those figures on it, the average person's going to go, why the hell did we not go with the original? That just screams to everyone, and I'm not stopping any madness here at all. I'm just going on what those figures tell us, and it's embarrassing, because effectively, if that there shows the first, that option, regardless of what it was, even if it blew out slightly, and we've always said that, spending 70 odd million is good value for the community. But when you start putting things in like the library, as you said, Councillor Piddington, in terms of its actual viability and life and longevity of it as a fit-for-purpose building, with all those other things attached to it, the fact that it's architectural and all those sorts of things, and those hurdles that we'd need to get over, we need to know that. I still remember quite distinctly when that came back and the work was done on it. I don't know about roofs not being attached to walls, but they did extra work on it. It cost us more, and they said, we will guarantee it for 10 years, but it's fit for 20 years plus. They were the words said to us in this council, and we're talking about bowling it. So if that's going to stay there, then the new option in terms of incorporating the library site and everything is an absolute, it shouldn't even be there. If we're going for a new theatre, and we've mentioned Barnard Street in the area, because we're talking strategically because we own the land and all those sorts of things, we should have an option that includes the museum with it. The economy of scale of having those two together at the very least and giving that options, I just see as viable. But again, if we go back to these figures in the original, I'm sorry, but you know, the proof's in the pudding. The key here is that the original option by far was what we've missed an opportunity if those figures are to be believed. So that's my 10 cents worth.
Councillor Pye.
I tend to agree with Stu and Stacey around, I feel like we're setting ourselves up to fail here, because we're going to have a repeat of the last 8 years. We're going to go out to the public, asking them to pick a path when we don't have all of the information. And I know we can't have, you know, to the dollar. And then we're going to get the information, and then we're going to go, well, we can't do that. And the public are going to go, we've already told you what we want. Why have you not done what we want? So that worries me. At the very least, I think we need to see the detail of the build costs so we can see exactly what the contingencies are. Because to your point, Councillor Burt, I don't, you know, if we're going, you know, that option there, the contingency was much, much smaller than the one we're including in the new build. So it's not apples with apples. We haven't included in the project we just ditched all the land we purchased around there. Then we haven't included that as something we could sell in the new one. So I just think there's lots of stuff that are not consistent. And what I'd actually really like us to discuss and include in this document is talk about what's important to us. Is it debt cap? Is it lower rates? Is it lower operating costs? Is it heritage? Is it future proofing? Or is it public safety? Rank those priorities and then assess each option against those priorities. So the community can clearly see how each of them match what is important to us. And I think that will give us some really good guidance. I've got lots of other comments and questions in that, but I think the document that needs to go out, if we're going to put it out based on the information we have, it needs to be far more transparent about what's, you know, the level of contingency, what's included and what's not in each of the build costs.
Yeah, so I think the contingency was only relative to the non-fixed cost on the previous one, wasn't it? So it was, I think it was, how much was it? Was there 40, there was X amount of million locked in at a fixed price?
I think it was about 42 locked in and about 4.5.
I get that, but then we're going over here and potentially, you know, a fixed price from a contractor. I know we have to go through a procurement process, but then we're adding on this massive contingency onto that one, so it's not apples with apples in my. That's what worries me.
I think the point is the majority of the cost of the original one was fixed. It was done, fixed. So there was only a small, very small percentage needed a contingency. When you look at the percentage of that contingency on that small provisional amount, it is just as high as those.
But we've just heard that there's and I know we can't, we've just heard that there's a contractor out there willing to give us a fixed price, which is much lower. So why would you then include a massive contingency on top? And I get the issues around using that contractor and procurement process and things like that. but potentially there's a solution that offers that fixed price. So why would
The big difference was we had done detailed design on the original, whereas this one is still in concept.
So I think that needs to be really clear when we go out with those figures. This is the contingency, and this is why it's so much bigger. So people understand that, because otherwise you've just got these 3 headline figures without actually understanding all the moving parts. That's what worries me.
If I could, through the chair, supporting the CE's comments, you had from the original offer 3 weeks ago, there was a fixed, as in the contractor took all of the risk on $42.5 million of your 46.4 offer. 4.3 of that offer was not fixed, but the majority of it they understood. And we had quite a large contingency then against that. The offer on the table that you had from a recent applicant for B, there is quite a sizable millions component of that, of the civils, that is provisional. It is not a fixed offer that I could see on the table for you. And I appreciate that they do come forward, but it needs considerable more work. And because it is a drawing concept, appreciating there was a lot of work put into that, you would still have a contingency amount. It is prudent to do that until you got a very firm offer on the table. There are civils that are required for that library building. So again...
That's already included, Nicole. And they're prepared to sign a fixed contract, which includes all that stuff you just mentioned. Wouldn't it actually help if you actually just spoke to them?
Councillor Booth.
I think from a perspective of procurement, I cannot talk to them directly, because if they apply with their bid with others, when you've gone through a consultancy process, to give them a fair chance and an open and transparent opportunity, there is an offer on the table, it would have to go out for procurement, and they're able to go through the process like everybody else. And I think that would only be fair to them in the first instance. I've had previous experience with that company. I know their track record. I know they're good. I've worked with them. So I don't doubt some of the stuff they put on the table, but what I can confirm is some of that number was provisional. And then on top of the number that you see in front of you, the number on the table, they did put forward, and we had to put forward, yes, a contingency amount. We have got costs associated, and there are fit-out costs, and they're very conservative, and we can look at how they're reduced. But that overall number has tried to capture everything involved in what would be encompassed, and that's going back off previous councillors' comments about wanting to see warts and all. The numbers that you see in front of you are the warts and all. Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. I actually had Councillor Jackson. Would you? Yeah, we'll go Councillor Jackson and then Councillor Piddington, back to Councillor Booth. Thanks.
Thank you. The feedback that I'm getting from the community, from the people who are talking to me, is one of, we elected you guys to make some decisions and just get on with it and make a decision. We seem to be taking this to the nth degree. I understand we have to be prudent and we have to be making the right choices based on the information that we have, but I keep getting all this information from our council officers, from our CE about where the project is at, from our QS, which was Rawlinson's, who said the project was going to come in on budget, from RDT, who were overseeing the project, who again also said that the project was going to come in on budget, and yet we turned that down. So now here we are with more options, and we're digging even deeper into it, and we're still not, for whatever reason, trusting the figures that are being given to us. I have confidence that those figures that have... I've looked at these figures here, and I'm a bit like Peter Burt. We've looked at these figures here, we've looked at the options, and I'm even more convinced now from looking at these options that we have in front of us that the option that we had, which was option A, was the best option. I look at option B, which is this museum, library, theatre, and Councillor Booth here, who continually, over the past 2 years that I've been in council, has bemoaned the fact that it was so expensive, too expensive, that the community would never go for a project of $57.1 million that it was being costed out at. And now, He's happy to look at a project that's worth over $70 million? Come on. We've got a project here for a refurb theatre, and again, I do agree with what Councillor Scott and Councillor Piddington were saying about that. I'd like to know more detail on that, particularly about the back of the house. I know you've said that that's going to be included in that, Mr. Trainer, but I want to make sure that if we're going to be delivering a refurb theatre, that we're delivering everything that we said we would deliver in that first project. The problem with that, though, is that it doesn't align with any strategic work that we did around City Town and around invigorating the south end of Stafford Street. A new theatre lacks a bit of detail, but I'm looking at the prices here and the quotes that are coming in, and I'm seeing still that we get better bang for buck out of option one than we do out of any of the other projects. It says here, total borrowings, no Crown funding and repayment of monies received. 52 million for the original, and this is what the public's going to see, $52 million. Option B, they see 76.1. And for the refurb, 59.8, and for the new theatre, 63.4. I imagine that for most ratepayers, here's going to be a bit of a spin for a start, looking at some of those figures, but they're still going to look back and go, why on earth do we ditch what was a great multi-purpose theatre museum? That's the way that we should have gone right from the get-go. And I still think that should definitely be for public consultation, because we consulted on that initially, and I think we should still go back to the public and at least have that as an option. Thank you.
When we look at the multi-purpose facility and the things that we don't know, I would have thought we had some pretty clever people in here that can help support us in that. For example, cost of library demolition and site remediation. We have a team in here that could put some costs around that. Overall build time, I'm pretty sure Thompson's would have had a build time. They gave you a book about that big on schedules. So I would have thought availability of fundraising for the museum. Please tell me we've sat down with the Museum Trust and said, we appreciate the work you're doing. You're an absolute important part of this consultation, and will you still support if you went down a multi-purpose on fundraising the remaining $1 million that they need? Surely we have done that. There's just so many things that I think we can do. We can actually tick off before we go out to consultation and make sure we're really, really confident in what we're doing. We haven't seen these figures, so I feel like, I mean, if you feel comfortable signing off a spreadsheet that has about 12 lines, then good Lord, that's a worry.
I'm just looking at
Oh, hold on, Councillor Booth. We'll get back in order. We'll go Councillor Piddington, then Booth, then Oliver. Thanks.
It's clear that this isn't clear because we've gone round and round in circles. We need to take a breath and go back. And to OJ's point, maybe the refurbishment of the Theatre Royal isn't 30, it's 35 or 38, so we deliver what they actually want. Because I'm just not sure by cutting and pasting and saying we're retaining the back of the house, which it says here, delivers at all what the theatre people wanted starting on this journey. So there's just too many unanswered questions for us to put this out to public consultation. You know, get a team of 3 or 4, get all the ideas down and let's answer the questions that we have. Because if we put this out, I want to be confident when someone asks me, what are we doing at the back of the Theatre Royal? I go, oh, I'm not really sure. You know, where are you putting the new theatre? Not really sure. You know, it just, well, you know, clowns in the circus and the ringmaster's gone rogue stuff, you know. We just don't know what we are doing.
Yeah, so I think the last workshop, and this is in this fashion, is to get a lot of that information out so it is in a transparent manner. We don't then want to go and get a half group of councillors to bring stuff together. I think this is the best format. So let's get if we can get the best use out of today, let's get all the information that you want and let's agree some sort of direction and pathway and timeline Because I'm still of the view, actually, we can keep this moving. I know there's a lot of information, but if we make this a priority, then we can keep that moving, because there again, for me, it goes back to 2019 without a performing arts venue. We need to give the community some certainty that we're working to a timeline. So what else do we want to get out there?
Can I just
jump in?
Just make a point here. The paper you have in front of you is a very draft consultation document. This meeting today was to say, are we on the right track with the right options? Okay. The feedback we've got is important, so when we bring this document back to you, we will have another paper sitting with it saying, here's what's in everything, here's what the costs are, here's where we got them from, and then you can have the debate again about which one is best or not, because again, all we've got to do is get the right information in the paper so we can get it to the public so they can read it and understand it. It's about telling our story and getting that right. So yes, we picked that up. So if they are the four you want us to take forward, then we've got some work to do. We've heard the work and we'll get on with it and then bring it back once we've got it in a fit state for the last conversation. That's to me the process.
Yeah, thanks. And I will draw you back to the recommendations, which are receive and discuss, which is what we're doing, the attached draft, endorse the options, so that's probably a key element. Timetable, agree a timetable, then don't worry about the fourth for now, but I'll go now to Councillor Booth and then back to Councillor Oliver.
Look, yeah, it's about the consultation, and it really needs to be about the civic spaces. And we need to keep it simple, but we definitely need, the reason that theatre was tipped over last time was because we had a far more logical option put in front of us, and that should have been in front of us a lot sooner than it was. The numbers that have been given by the contractor or by the proponent include earthworks, they include electrical, they include everything, and they're prepared to sign a number. And so why wouldn't we just use that number? I mean, you can keep putting things in front of it, but to increase it by 37% is crazy. So I think the most sensible thing is all three years, yourself, Rawlinson's, and the contractor sit around the table and actually get a number that you're actually happy to walk away with and present. So that's what I've got to say. I guess the other thing is we've got 6 key civic facilities. This building here, we've got the aquatic centre, we've got the art gallery, theatre, museum, library. If we take care of those 3 units, those 3 civic facilities in one go, we'll be in good shape as a council moving forward, because they'll be 100% MBS. And plus, we will take care of our strategic routes program, which we are obliged to do. So, and plus the option to reinvigorate and be the catalyst for the CBD to move forward. So we've got to actually put that on the table and give the people the option. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Councillor Oliver.
Just got a couple of quick questions. The first question is when Rawlinson's and Thompson's, when you had Rawlinson's QS it, did you have a meeting between Rawlinson's, yourselves and Thompson's in the same room? And did Thompson's agree that the $9.5 million extra in contingency was about right? That's my first question.
So the answer to that is Rawlinson's worked with Thompson's on their figures. That was one process, and then they picked it up from there and they added the contingencies after they went through the Rawlinson's numbers. So when you look at the 69, 6 million of that is actually fit out. If you take off the 6 million, you're down to 63. the 53, it's about 11-12% contingency that we've added on top of that, and that contingency is for potential price changes.
Yeah, that was 1.5 million.
Yeah, and potential, there was 2 different contingencies, a client one and a contractor one.
Yeah, and they were 5% and 10%.
Correct.
On the price act.
On the
51,987,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question is, there's a fit out there for $2 million for the library. What does that entail?
I think that
For the
that's...
fit out for the library, because I look at that, and I've been for a walk around the library today, and I'm thinking, $2 million, you got all the stuff in the library you could reuse. You know, we can't go out with numbers that don't make sense, surely.
These guys will all witness that I don't believe that number neither, but it's there just in case.
If I may, as well, there's a lot more to that first entrance in the library than you might realise as well. There's quite a bit underneath. And there are unknown costs associated with that, which include the relocation and potential temporary storage as well. So we're doing the best we can with some iterative figures that will evolve over time, but have to consider that it's not just the shelves that you see.
Yeah, go for it, Councillor.
What was the overall savings on operation costs by having all the 3 facilities together from having them all apart?
We have estimated approximately 15% in terms of operational savings. And that's what we've factored into the table in the report.
No worries. We were Councillor...
That was 1.5 million, roughly.
Jackson. Yeah, that's right. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hark back to it about decision making. It's our role as councillors to be making decisions. And if I look at this and I look at these figures here, and you might say that they're just rough figures, but they generally are going to be probably within cooey of where we need to be. If I, as a ratepayer, am looking at these figures, I'm going, my God, why is that first option not on the table? I think that we owe it to the public to at least have that option on the table. That is what we publicly consulted on twice. That project is ready to go. It's ready to push play. What I'm saying is that we offer it to our local contractors and give them the opportunity to make it work. God knows they need the work right now. So I still think we owe it to them to have that option as one of the options that goes out to public consultation.
7-2. That's all I'm going to say.
Ship has sailed, OJ.
I think we owe it to the public.
Councillor Pye. Yeah, you've got the mic.
On that point, I don't think we talk about what we need to balance up here. So we've got to balance up capital costs versus ongoing operation costs. And yes, one's going to be dearer now, but it will end up being cheaper over time because the operating costs are less. And I'm not saying which is right. I'm just saying this is what we need to think about. And then we need to think about saving heritage and the cost that comes with that versus future-proofing some assets and ensuring public safety. So these are the things that I'm talking about that we need to kind of go, what are our priorities and how do each of them measure up? Because it is a decision-making between CapEx, OpEx, between heritage and future-proofing. And that is why I think we're finding it also challenging, because there's no right answer.
And I think that estimated OpEx should be included with the consultation. Yeah. Your capital and your OpEx, which makes good sense. Where were we? We'll go Councillor Booth.
I guess you'd put public safety at the very top, wouldn't you?
You would, but this is what I'm saying. We probably need to, as a group, go, what are our priorities? And you can easily rate them, just vote on them, and then you get, this is what we picked as the top priorities, and this is how each option meets them. you might put public safety, somebody else might put heritage. I'm not saying, I'm just saying everyone has a different view, but as a group, we could rank them and then come up with a group rating.
Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, exactly right, Michelle. And we need to remember why we are here at this place right now. But this is just talking about the consultation document and just effectively what's missing. We've decided that we are going to reconsult because we did actually hear through a process that regardless of how much we had consulted previously, we were in a time and space where everybody thought differently about rates and debt and costs and everything that makes things sound expensive. That's why we ended up there and why we were challenged to come up with a plan B, another alternative, which has put us in this position right now. We're reading through the draft document. Contrary to how it feels in here, I don't think you're that far off. I really don't. I think there's just some stuff here that we need to do so that we are comparing apples with apples, and some of the reasons, like you're talking about, Michelle, let's measure those in the same document amongst ourselves and with the public, and then I guarantee we're going to get a clear steer out of this. We will land on something, but I don't want us to be the council that's known for paralysis by analysis, which is what it sometimes feels like. We're not going to get a draft detailed costed design out of anything other than what we already had. So when you come to us, Mr. CEO, with your figures, and I know you're sitting there thinking, we're pretty much bloody there with those numbers now. You just need to convince us with all the writing that's around it, I think. So I'll hand it back to the Mayor, who needs to move this forward.
Yeah, so, I mean, the actual recommendations aren't too far off, I think, what we still need to do. So there's a fair bit of discussion that's come out today. Go for it, Mr. Doran.
So what would be really helpful going ahead is just a really indicative view from council as a whole about what options we need to develop a bit more. We're hearing lots of individual ones, but we don't have a group view on that, and to provide a short list now would actually enable us to use our best time to actually focus on what we've got at the moment. We've got 4 options on the table. There's another 2 options that are sitting out there at the moment. So what would be really useful and what would make the process to be able to work within a timeline that might get stuff back by October would be a clear steer from you about what the preferred options were, even if that is working out the matrix of needs yourselves. But for our purposes, that would be probably the main outcome from this that would be particularly useful.
Suggest two, new theatre on its own or a new multi-use civics facility.
Mr. Doran, I think I absolutely am hearing what you're saying to keep the team going forward, but I just wonder if we're just missing one step, and that's just in a workshop in the next week or whatever, when we can make it work, we just as a group, we go through each one and you actually show us the details that you've got. We haven't got that. We haven't seen anything about what you've written down. So I go back to old Councillor Pye over there around, show me, don't tell me. We actually need to sit down and we spend some time actually you telling us all the great work that you've done. Let us see it, and then we can really measure out with you what's missing. So, for example, MBIE, for goodness sakes, just get them to write a letter. What is their stance? Would they support a heritage, the Theatre Royal? Would they support a multi-person? Just get it. They must be able to write a letter.
They won't give it to us.
Okay, so I'm struggling to understand why not. But anyway, again, let's have that conversation. So I just feel that as a group we're missing a step, and that's actually for you to show us all this detail that you're talking about. That's about that much in the report that you've given us, but you've obviously done heaps of work, and I want to acknowledge that, but let's see it. And so over the 3 options that we've got here, acknowledging ones do nothing, the three options, let's see that detail so we can support the conversation, so we can support the documents. That's what I'm asking for. I've got a list, but I see no value in rattling off my list now when we need to do it together as a team.
I agree with that. I can't see how we can move away from these three options, because one is, we've got spend 70 million or spend 30 million. But of that spend 30 million, which will be very attractive to a number of people because they don't like the debt or want to keep the rates low or whatever, you've then got heritage versus new. And they are such different things. And I think, I don't see how we can not consult on these three. Yeah, unless you're going to go spend 70, spend 30, and then if it's 30, then we have to go back out and go, okay, we've got 30, do you want? So I can't see how we can move away from it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, through that, we may be able to do something creative through the consultation whereby, if it's the theatre way, it can be, do you have a preference on new or old? Because they're similar. I don't know, I'm sure we can be smart enough to do that. Councillor Piddington.
Yeah, look, just quickly, just the two theatre options. Your costing for the new one, per se, must have set a theatre so many seats, these different rooms, sizes, to come up with a number. I'd like to see that attached. Same with the Theatre Royal. Actually, we are doing something new back a house, or what are we doing? Are we just strengthening it and putting a coat of paint on it? We do need a wee bit of detail when we do that. And if we're not sure of MB funding, it should be out on all the options. Not likely, unlikely. If they won't put it in writing, just consider it gone. Get it back, because otherwise it muddies the waters. And to Michelle's point, OPEX is important. 1.5 million doesn't sound a lot of saving, but that's 15 million in 10 years. People need to know it. That's the detail I want to be consulting on, so we land at the right answer for the community.
Yeah, agree. So if we go back, though, to what recommendations are, we all agree that there's some more information, however, which way we've communicated that, but so the team can keep moving forward. Are you still comfortable with the options which are in front of you, which is new, upgrade, heritage, all of what Councillor Piddington just said, new theatre, or the fourth, which is close? Yeah, so I know, Councillor Jackson, you've noted some disapproval to those four options, and we can note that, but is everyone else comfortable with that as consultation? Because I think we can still move this forward. Yes, there's a lot of questions that and answers that we want before it goes out, but let's work through an iterative process so we can keep it moving. And I think then it's for Chief Executive and his team to work through realistic timeframes. So, further discussion before we go to the motions, the recommendations. Councillor Booth.
You've got other pages here with some pieces written about the pros and cons. Is that we talk about that later?
Um,
Well, there was a list that came out last night, but I just had a couple other things that, okay, so we're going to workshop that, aren't we?
Well, that was out of some of the stuff that we'd done last week, wasn't it, at the workshop? So, but if you've got
I've got a few extra things that I'd like to add, which I'll give to Stephen if you like.
Yeah, we'll send something out to feed into.
Yep.
I think it's probably the easiest way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty. So back to the recommendations. So if we go to 1, 2 and 3, I think we'll just... 4 is delegate authority to the Mayor and Chair, which is Councillor Scott. It's not final sign-off, so I think we'll just scratch that for now. So if we go to 1, 2 and 3, is anyone comfortable to move those?
I think 2 just should say endorse the options outlined in the content of the draft consultation document. I think that's full stop, because we haven't,
yes.
we're not agreeing to go out yet, but we're agreeing on the options. That's how I feel.
Yep, 100%. So you're happy to move that, Councillor Scott, based on that?
Yep.
just agreed a timetable consultation. We haven't, that's out as well, isn't it? We're just going to Councillor Scott, have a workshop and see where we land.
No, I think we're still going to, I think we'll delegate the timetable to the Chief Executive to come back. Yeah, based on, yeah, because I'm just conscious that this is something that the public wants to see some movement on. I understand and hear what everyone said, but I agree it needs to move forward. Yeah, Mr. Doran.
So point 20 in the report would push it back to presenting at a future Council Standing Committee meeting, a more designed and developed document. This would push the consultation period to October, and then the results of that could be presented to the December Council meeting.
Yeah, look, I mean, we can put a meeting wherever we want to, so I think it's for you guys to take it offline, see what time you need, what information you come back, and we can set meetings around that. Yeah, and we can pull a meeting together, extraordinary meeting if required. That would be my view. Yeah. Cool. So we had a mover, Councillor Scott. Someone to second the motion. Councillor Booth. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Or yep. Against. Do you want to just note a reason?
Because I still feel that the best option is option one. I think that the public deserves to have that in front of them as well.
Thank you, and that's noted. So that is carried. So we are going to move now. Thank you, team. We are now going to move, and I apologise, I know people have been waiting with anticipation, but we're going to move to 9.5, which is review. And Brendan, we're going to put a timeline on this, so I think we can get through this in 10 minutes. Actually, I think if you I'll let everyone take 2 minutes for the older bladders, etc., that need a break. Welcome back. So we now go to 9.5, which is the representation review, adoption of the final proposal. So we'll give this item 10 minutes and we'll see how we go. Brendan, I'll let you lead us in, and then I'm sure we've discussed this enough and we've heard very passionate people in the affected communities, so we can, you give us a bit of an overview and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Good evening, Council. Thank you. I will be, as instructed, brief, and you can let me know through the questions and discussion whether I've been too brief. But I'll take the report mainly as read. The key bits to be aware of really are this is nearing the end of the representation review journey, the intention being to identify communities of interest and provide them with fair and effective representation. I'd like to acknowledge the submitters, some of them in the public gallery today or maybe watching online, who provided information to the Council in written and verbal format. And effectively what the question before Council today is, if you take the initial proposal that you resolved a few months ago as your starting point, and you consider the submissions that you've received against that, do you believe that the initial proposal needs to be amended in any way to provide for that effective and fair representation to identified communities of interest? That's the key thing you need to satisfy yourself with. The breakdown of the submissions are in the report. I won't go through the statistical breakdowns, etc. I can if you wish, but I won't in my opening remarks. And just noting, really the two options before Council is either to resolve the initial proposal as your final proposal, or to amend it in some way. And if you amend it, if you decline to continue with your initial proposal through to your final proposal, you need to replace it with something else. And we can step through that if you wish. So I'll pause at that point, noting probably at 8.5 minutes left or something like that, and throw it back to you, Mayor Bowen.
You're doing well. Look, I want to draw you straight to number 39. And if you go to 39.1, retaining the existing arrangements, which is option 1 in the initial proposal, the 7th of May report, an LGC determination would be required because the Geraldine would not be compliant within the threshold. From where I sit and the feedback that we've had from the community, I think this is the best course in my view, and that's a proposal that I would support to seek the Local Government Commission's determination. So I'll put that out there as a starting point, and if there was further support, I'd be happy to move that. Councillor Shannon.
I'd be happy to second that, Mr Mayor, and that this is effectively what some of us wanted before we actually went out to consultation, and I am in hindsight pleased that we did consult with the community, because that gave us everything that we needed to be able to come back and say, Scotty, you were right in the first place. But anyway, what we do know is that communities of interest trumps absolutely everything, and this gives us the opportunity to actually fight hard to retain that community of interest, noting as well that, as I said earlier, I do not trust the census figures at all. They were a shambles. The whole world knows they were a shambles. When it comes to review again, and we are heading completely in the direction that it's supposed to be, yes, we'll have to face this again, but for now, I absolutely agree that we need to stick with the status quo and let Gavin continue to do a great job for his Orari and Kakahu constituents.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, then Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Councillor, for that endorsement. And obviously, I have to commend the communities of interest that came out and submitted and came and spoke. There was some pretty high level, I think you'd all agree, there were some very high level submissions put forward. Obviously, I drove home fuming when the first recommendation was put through to go out to shift some boundaries and stuff, but at the end of the day, like Councillor Shannon said, it was probably the best option, and now we have some meat on the bones to take to the Commissioner.
I'm hearing some thanks from our Geraldine Tamuka councillors. No, we'll take that on board. Thank you. No, you're welcome. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, look, I endorse those comments as well. It's a steep learning curve as a councillor, and again, hindsight's a great thing. But once you do go out to the public and you ask the right questions, and again, like as Councillor Oliver said, commend the local communities for getting together. I didn't realise that the strength of the feeling was quite as strong as it was. So it was good to hear that back from the community. So yeah, thumbs up.
Councillor Pye.
100% support this option, but just want to be clear, our community and council understand the risk of this option. If you could outline that, please.
If by risk you mean that the Local Government Commission might make a determination that is something completely different to what we agree, then sure, that is the case. I think it's likely that if you stuck with either the initial proposal or this option to retain the status quo, that it would end up with the Local Government Commission anyway, because frankly I think we'd all think that one of the submitters would probably appeal to the Local Government Commission anyway. So it's probably out of our hands. The only way that it wouldn't end up with the Local Government Commission, in my professional view, would be if we were able to find an alternative set of arrangements that was compliant and that all of the submitters magically agreed to, which I think is unlikely. So if that's what you mean by risk, then that's my view on that.
I do, but if it goes to the Commissioner, which it likely will, what are the options for the Commissioner? Is it yes, no, or is it here's some lines on the map and I'll make them up?
My understanding is that the Local Government Commission has in some ways a blank slate, but it has to be clearly linked to the material in front of it in terms of our reasoning for the initial and the final proposal and the submissions that we've received on it. So they could resolve something that's different to the initial proposal, different to the status quo, etc. They may hold a hearing if they feel that they need more information than what's been provided in writing, and they may use some of the information provided with that hearing, if it's held, to make their determination as well. So in that sense, things could change beyond what we currently think the options might be.
And if you look at, the ECAN result, they have previously made a decision that's overrepresented South Canterbury by 30%. So, they are, whereas we're asking for, a small increment relative to that. Councillor Scott.
I fully support it, and yeah, like everyone else, just want to acknowledge and thank all the submissions. It's thoroughly important for our commission going to the Commissioner with. So, whilst I know it was an emotional time, it was absolutely valuable. So, thank you to all the submitters.
Awesome, thank you. So, if there's not further discussion, the motion is effectively 39.1. If you're comfortable. Is that all that you need for a motion, Brendan, to take you forward?
Yes, so if Council was to resolve that the status quo being option one that you considered on the 7th of May is your final proposal, then we've got all the wording, etc., that we need for that for the resolution and to move forward.
Yeah, cool, perfect. So I moved it. Councillor Shannon was a seconder. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, team. Right, we're going to go back now to 9.4, which is council investments and borrowings on page 64. Might have to set time limits on each one. Actually, that worked really well. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be reasonably quick. It's a receive and note report based on information that we provided to Bancorp at the end of June. The standard report outlines where we're at, what we're up to. It's basically... The other question that I have for the council is Bancorp have offered to come and do another session. So if at any point in time We'd like them to come and talk about interest rate swaps and debt and those kind of things, then they're more than happy. They're also more than happy to come and talk about any of the Three Waters stuff and the funding associated with that.
Yeah.
Once we get to that path, they're happy to come and talk to that.
Yeah, I think we'll take... Yeah,
We currently pay a monthly fee to them, so it's included. Yes, it is. Yes.
Good question. But yeah, I think that would make good sense. Did I have Councillor Pye? Did you? Yep.
Just a couple of questions around, I know there's been some big movement in swap rates. So how do you make decisions on when to cash out and cash in? And is that just guided by policy, or do Bancorp advise on that, or how are those decisions made?
So interest rate swaps, Bancorp advise on that and let us know when is a good time to engage and when a good time not to engage. But the latest LGFA figures, the interest rates are going down. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have the budget, more than enough budget.
That's exciting.
And my second question is just on this investment management, this special funds portfolio summary, which I must have seen before but haven't noticed. What is that, and how does that fit with our financial strategy? Because effectively we're buying equity, shares and equity, and I forgot to go back and read the strategy, but I didn't really think that aligned with our strategy.
Those were set up a long time ago, so I'm not sure what the strategy was at that point in time, but they are historic.
Do we need to revisit our strategy and make sure that owning these fits the strategy, or I just
we can double check that.
You're failing to see what the special funds is and why we have it, and it would be interesting to see if it's.
We actually did have a lot more of them, and they've slowly fallen off. So it must have been at that point in time to hold funds for a certain reason. Yeah.
Does council want a list of those funds and what they're for?
No, they're there. They're there. It's just, what is the point of them? Why do we own them? And does it actually fit with our financial strategy, owning some shares in Meridian and ANZ? And a weird thing to own. Page 71 of the meeting papers.
Yeah, no, that's right. Further questions? You move it. Thank you, Councillor Booth. Seconder? Yeah, thanks, Councillor Pye. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks, Andrea. We are now to 9.6, which is policy review, dangerous affected in sanitary buildings. Yeah, that's just where it's invested, eh? Yeah, I think that's just where it's invested. Talk up, yeah. Alrighty, and into the exciting stuff. Policy. Welcome. There again, time limits apply.
Sure, you've got some time left over from the previous
1 minute.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'm pleased to note that we leave the best for last, so I'm sure you'll appreciate that. Look, this is a 5-yearly review of this particular policy, dangerous affected and sanitary building policy. We have done this in consultation with MB, and coincidentally have done a recent review of those particular TA functions, so it was actually quite timely that this came up at the same time. So they have provided feedback and of course Brendan and I have worked through that to produce this particular draft document now for your review. So I'll take it as read and happy to take any questions or queries.
Questions? Yep, Councillor Pye, and then go to Councillor Jackson.
I just note the definition of heritage buildings. It doesn't refer to what we've identified in our district plan, or does that exactly match the New Zealand heritage list maintained under section 65 of the Act?
So this definition is out of Section 7 of the Building Act. Yeah. And often there will be, between different enactments, some discrepancies.
So then I guess the question is, did we want to include in that definition anything we've identified on our district plan? Or are we just ignoring them?
That's a really good question.
To add to that, I think there is the ability for us to include some flexibility within the policy to say that if we wanted to, we could consider heritage more broadly. That's perfectly fine. I will note that the parts of the policy that apply to heritage only basically effectively say additional to anything else that we would look to potentially consult with various parties in relation to that. It's not treating heritage buildings, however they might be defined, in necessarily any other way. We'd still go through the process that's outlined in clauses 11, 12 of the policy, really, in terms of the decision making around how we treat those.
Just to add to that, and going back to my earlier comment, Councillor Pye, about the differences between the enactments. So this is solely relating to the Building Act, and whilst there are other things to give consideration to, the definition under the Building Act is what we're referring to in this particular policy, and so therefore, and this is part of the guidance which from MB as well, we're very clear on the terms, if you like, for want of a better term, of what it relates to.
Councillor Jackson.
The Chrome Platers building, at the risk of, he's not here, he can't get me under the table. Peter Boots had never mentioned it, but I'm not really quite sure what the reasoning for that was. So that Chrome Platers building, what's the status on that? Is that anything to do with us at all? It's not. It is? It's not? It is?
It's complicated.
It's complicated. Can someone enlighten me? Is that okay?
It's like...
Thank you through the chair. Confirming that yes, 2 North Street Chrome Platers is in the ownership of Timaru District Council, but the ownership was taken in partnership at the time, and there's quite a bit of history, a number of years of this. Peter could not, or Councillor Burke could not get involved because ECAN are our other partners in that building. And they do the stage reports to the Ministry of the Environment for the 100% funding we've had for the work we've done to date. And we're in the final stage now and encouraging the Ministry of the Environment to 100% fund the full remediation of that site. So we've got a few issues with staff changes with ECAN, but that is the reason. And we've got boreholes that we monitor every quarter, or they monitor on our behalf. But we took the ownership to allow other agencies to support the remediation of the land. It's just taken many more years than it possibly should have done.
So is there a possible timeline on that, Nicole?
The next applications with the Ministry of Environment is September, but the ECAN haven't finished the Stage 4 report. I've done the draft. I've sent it through a number of months ago, and we've got some work to do on the boreholes, but we can actually put an application in. They have encouraged via ECAN our application now. They actually want to, but that was with the previous government just before the changeover. So I will follow that up. I have been following it up, and I'm in conversation with an ECAN staff member that works with me, a senior scientist. But yeah, it would be really nice to get something through to the Ministry before Christmas and get that process in play. But it does mean coming back to you all, and also through the Regional Council and their councillors, and with the chief executives of both organisations, to have a little conversation if we were ever in a position where there was a contribution required.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Councillor Pye.
Sorry, just one more very minor thing. The submissions that you're intending Evening close on Sunday the 22nd of September, which is a long weekend, so I wondered if you should make that Monday the 23rd of September in case people want to spend their public holiday making a submission.
If that is important to council, we can do that. That's fine. That makes sense. With the technology we have that runs the submissions, we can make it, the digital clock basically stop whenever we want. I'm not going to be there personally at 11:59 p.m. on a public holiday, but take your point entirely, we can push that back 24 hours. That's fine. If I can make just a couple of very brief comments. Jason noted before that MBIE had a look at this, firstly in terms of their assessment, which has been incorporated into the policy, and then secondly, we sent them a draft version of the policy that we had worked up, incorporating their feedback, saying, what do you think? They suggested a couple of non-material changes. For example, in one part of the policy, we'd accidentally referred to issuing a notice under the wrong part of the Act, that they suggested we just incorporate for consultation. Those couple of minor non-material changes aren't in front of you today because we received it in the last few days, but with your trust and permission, we'd ask to consult on that policy.
Cool. Councillor Scott.
I just said again, and just another educational question, under page 96, policy statement section, where we say council will not proactively inspect all buildings in the district, 100% get that, and we sort of rely on our emergency services and partner agencies to identify, and council will respond. Just out of interest, like how many do we get? 10 calls a year, and then we assess and say no, or I know we've got one, but how often do we get calls from our emergency services?
We work with FENS in particular when they have concerns about a particular building that they've attended for whatever reason, generally relating to a fire. And we have done a little bit of work relating in that space of recent time of a group of shops which were sort of being joined together. An issue with one of them, there was some considerations for the wider shops themselves. So that was a really good partnership, I guess, with Alpine Energy as well, in terms of identifying those risks and dealing with them. Didn't form part of wasn't deemed as a dangerous building necessarily, so this particular policy wasn't enacted, but it was just a way of how we sort of work together. Yeah.
Through your worship, another way that these properties come to our attention is often through under the Health Act. Section 29 of the Health Act is Health Act nuisances, and sometimes they come to our attention as often what you might call hoarders that have a property that's degraded to such a point that we need to establish whether or not it's safe for somebody to live there, and what action needs to be taken to remediate the site. So sometimes it comes in via that channel, and our environmental health officers will go out and do an assessment, but they often team up with Jason's team, and they go together so that the Building Act is alongside the Health Act. So that's just another way they come in.
Or just in addition to that, yeah, Paul's quite right. It's quite a connected relationship we have internally when these matters arise. We also get lots of inquiries from just members of the public, most of which don't meet the definition of this particular policy, but is another way of how that information is, how we're made aware of it. Yeah.
Righty, if there's not further questions, so recommendations 1 and 2 on page 88, can I have a mover for those? Councillor Pye, thank you. Councillor Booth, perfect. Very fitting. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I'm glad someone else got the joke. Alrighty, we're going now to 9.7, policy review, local approved products policy. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much. So the policy before you is the local approved products policy. Effectively, it's been described in some ways as an exercise in risk management, insofar as there isn't currently a problem, quote unquote, that needs to be managed insofar as there are no approved psychoactive substances. But there is the legislative framework for those substances to be approved, with some caveats that I can get into if you want. So in that sense, it's a question of, does council feel the need to retain the existing policy or amend it in some way, or look to revoke it? From an officer perspective, if we're being, let's just say, risk averse, and with the idea that we already have it, and it's not managing a problem, but it might, we believe that it'd be appropriate to roll the policy over without amendment, and therefore, against the significance and engagement policy, it doesn't require consultation. We can just simply inform the public that that's occurred. Further, we don't believe that there would be meaningful public consultation with it if we were to consult on it. Those are probably the introductory comments. Paul, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty
happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Brendan. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Just keep in place your Councillor Jackson.
So, a quick question, Brendan. Is this very similar to the LAP policy, yeah? Is it sort of the same sort of thing? No, it's not?
Some of the policy levers are, like you'll see things like sensitive sites and distances and things like that, but whereas the local alcohol policy deals with alcohol, this is around psychoactive substances. So, yeah, I appreciate you
I get that, but I'm just saying it's a similar sort of framework.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Councillor Booth, you happy to move it?
Happy to move it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Shannon?
Yeah, well, immediately when I started reading through this, I thought, there may not be any issues out there right here and now, but the ones that we've had in the past, nobody foresaw them. Nobody knew that they were coming at any stage. So to me, it would just be prudent that it was kept in place just in case. We've got a policy that's already written up. It just rolls over. It's a no-brainer for me, so I'm more than happy to second it.
Gotta love a just-in-case policy. Yeah, Councillor Piddington.
No problem at all with the policy, but I am intrigued by the map, and I know it's not part of the policy, but places like the Sophia Street car park are marked as sensitive sites. I'm not quite sure how that comes about, and I would have thought we actually need a map, because if suddenly we had to invoke this, we would need to show people where it is. And I just noticed, like, Idea Services has moved, Iraqi Education has moved, that are shown on this map. So should we update the map just to make it easy?
As I tilt my head sideways, yeah, that is probably a mistake, to be fair. The map was regenerated by GIS July this year, so it incorporates movements that we're aware of in the last 5 years since the policy was reviewed. But yes, I fully appreciate that. Looks like a mistake that we didn't pick up. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect, thank you. So happy to second that motion. Further discussion? No, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Good work. We did 9.8, we did 9.9. There's no urgent business. We covered the minor nature item. That's... Oh, sorry. 9.9, how could I miss it? Sorry, I knew there was one. Right, 9.9, there we are. Yeah, perfect. On page 155.
Okay, thank you. So this, a little bit of history here, this was a public car park, was very underutilised at the time and was considered to be surplus to requirements. So it was put, the car park was divested and was purchased by Bay Hill Developments through a public process. At the time of the sale, council decided that they put an encumbrance on the title, which basically said that it had to be used for car parking forever after. So there's no opportunity to develop that land in any other way. So since that time, Bay Hill Developments have now requested that the encumbrance be removed. Part of that is around the fact that the car parking rules have changed in the district plan, that parking is no longer a requirement associated with developments. And also will say that there is no shortage of parking on the Bay Hill at the moment. So it's not as though the car parking provision is critical for a council. So you have a choice, a recommendation. There's two recommendations. One is to agree to remove the encumbrance or retain it. Thank you.
Understand that it's changed, but I want to be a wee bit rigorous around this because of what's involved. Why did we put the encumbrance on if it wasn't a worry? And how do you know that there's no demand for car parking now as said in this report?
Well, I guess the car parking's modelling that's been done since this time has indicated that there is no demand at the moment for, well, high demand for car parking. You know, you do have the businesses along the Bay Hill, and at times in the evening there is, you know, fairly high usage, but there's usually parking available most of the time. So I don't know why the encumbrance was put on in the first place. I think it was because it was a car park and they wanted to maintain it being a car park. And I think the other factor is that it was proposed to be used as a car park in relation to a proposed development on the Bay Hill there on the corner.
Councillor Scott.
I presume if there was to be development on the site, it would go in resource consent through the entire process anyway, doesn't it? So
yes, that's correct, yes. And that there is a current consent on this site, and it is proposed that this is car parking in relation to that consent act.
Any further discussion? Look, I think I'll just get it out there. I think the key challenge that we have is, does this survive the front page test? And I would say it doesn't, or the perception is that it doesn't. And so I would suggest that we go along the lines of something that it's considered in the future when a plan for development of the site is guaranteed, something along those lines, because what we're going to do is remove the encumbrance, and that will increase the value of the site, and that to me just does not look good for council. Whether there's, you know, I mean, we don't know the reason. We don't know whether the site's going to be developed. It could be sold tomorrow, and I have some concerns. If we knew that it's going to be developed and that land was used for the development and or continue to be used for car park or what have you, I think that would be fine. But until we have that confirmation, then I just have concerns that this is not going to go down well for the reputation of council. So based on that, I would move that we retain the encumbrance on Lot 1 to positive plan 302425 until such a time that council can be assured a development is occurring. Councillor Jackson.
I'm happy to second that.
I just have one question, sorry.
Yeah.
I understood that this land is associated to a current resource consent for parking. So how does that work again? So you can't just change it?
they have a number of options. They can apply for a new consent or seek a variation to the current consent. Go through the process. Yeah.
But just a question following on Andrew, and I'm not saying either way, but I just want this clear. But if you lift an encumbrance on something, there's no reason when you went for resource consent, it wouldn't be granted.
Yeah, that is correct, yeah. But it's also when you remove an encumbrance, there's no guarantee that it will be used. It could be used for another purpose. It could be a separate consent.
I guess I get that, but I don't agree with point 11, may improve the value, but the officers have no evidence of that. You can't show me anywhere in New Zealand where land is not more value where you can build on it than have a car park.
Yeah, the encumbrance says it can only be used for car parking and cannot be built on. So
until we
if you
remove
remove that encumbrance, then it frees up or the use of that land is what we're saying, which may increase the value.
Alrighty.
Sorry, can you repeat the motion to me, please?
Yeah, so it was motion 2, which was retain the encumbrance on lot 1, deposit plan 302425. What did I say? Until you get that? Yeah, okay, so yeah, retains the encumbrance until we have confirmation that a development will occur. We need to estimate what that looks like, but I think it would effectively be the owner come back to council to say, hey, this is what's happening. We need the encumbrance removed because this and this is happening, and there's a plan that council's comfortable with. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Piddington.
I know it comes to council, but, you know, legally, the company's probably entitled to do that. Is there any other mechanism other than us voting that it can it go to a commissioner? Because 2 of the council have sat back from the table because it involves them, and I take the mayor's point of a front page test, but we've got to be fair to all parties. So I'm just wondering, can we default to a commissioner in some way, or?
I'm not sure about that. I'll have to seek some legal advice.
I would have thought that's unfair, the costs associated to that. So I think what's originally on the table is probably a fairer motion.
Or just, Elliot might be able to just speak briefly. Welcome.
So we're the question around delegating the decision making to the commissioner. I don't see why not. You know, like I don't have the standing of orders in front of me, but it's you know, typically done with any of these resource management kind of type of decision making matters. So technically, I don't really see why not. But yeah, there's other considerations there around the material upon which they're going to make the decision, and obviously the cost.
So that is an option. We've got the original motion on the table. Sorry, Councillor Piddington, I'll let you speak to that.
I guess it's a cost, but should we not go back to the company and give that option rather than a no? I don't know. I just want to be fair to everyone in this.
I don't think that this motion isn't saying no. It's just saying, hey, present a plan. What does that look like? And I think there's nothing to say that the company can't request further review of the decision and that it be taken to a commissioner for a decision independent of elected members, which I think, and that's fair. There's still a way to process that if required. Yep. So further discussion, comfortable? Yep. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Perfect. So we go now to exclusion of the public. I did pick up all on that, didn't I? So thanks, Nick and Janine. Appreciate you being here today.